Mr. Keir Starmer, and then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Which MP would you send to space?
Although I'll get in terrible trouble if I answer that. But it's fair to say there's quite a long list.
The sad thing is about sending people into space on a one-way ticket is I don't think that we've built a spaceship big enough to take the lunatics off this planet. I mean, from the net zero loonies to the transgender loonies to the racists to the terrorists. There is just so many to the wokerati. We need some big spaceships.
Big spaceships.
Good evening. I never know how you're going to start this conversation, Jeremy.
Katy Perry went to space today, OK? Who would you send... I'd love her to say what I wanted to, but I'd never disrespect her. Who would you send to space who could never come back?
Well, I'd be happy to send Ed Miliband to space, I think.
Oh, that is an outrageous question to I'm not even going to answer that question.
Sam Matterface, so you get the job, yeah? Come on.
No, Sam Matterface, I tell you what, there's no.
I think David Lammy would be the person I'd want to send up in space and never come back again.
Yeah, the problem is how much would the bill be for him to munch through whatever food on the way there?
Hey, it worked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is the home of common sense. It feels as though we should start the show this morning with the blast of Paranoid by Black Sabbath, but we're not allowed to do that, unfortunately, because it would be stricken from the record, and we're not allowed to play music because otherwise YouTube will take it down and we won't be able to put it out there for you to enjoy if you're not actually listening to it at the moment. But obviously all the papers full this morning of news about Ozzy Osbourne last night, tributes to the Black Sabbath legend, dead at 76 years of age. We'll be telling you stories about him all the way through the show this morning. Theo Rushford's with me as well. We're going to be talking about some government business too, but I think we should first take a little time to look at some of the front pages. R.I.P. Ozzy, it says on the front page of the Daily Mirror. The Wonderful Wizard of Ozzy on the Sun, which is probably the best one, 1948 to 2025. Rock legend Ozzy Osbourne died yesterday, aged 76, just 17 days after his farewell concert with Black Sabbath. I wasn't a massive fan of Black Sabbath, but, you know, you can't avoid the fact that Ozzy Osbourne, one of the great British eccentrics, one of the great British rock stars, one of the great British historical figures over time. And I got to know his wife, Sharon Osbourne, quite well during the time when we were working together on talkTV, doing shows like The Talk, and she was amazing. She was so funny. She knew everybody. She had so many stories to tell, and she didn't take any crap from anybody, which was brilliant. So we'll talk a lot about Ozzy Osbourne this morning. If you've got stories about him, if you've ever met him, if you ever went to any of his shows, love to hear your stories. Please do send them in to us, 0344 499 1000. Let's celebrate one of the great Britons who has now passed away at the age of 76. One of the things I said this morning was, you know, I don't know why everybody's that surprised that Ozzy Osbourne's dead. Obviously, it's a sad day, because nobody ever thought he would last this long, considering what he did to himself, considering what he took in terms of into his body. He was a heroin addict at one point. He took loads of acid. One of his great quotes that I read overnight was that he said, I took so much acid one day, I walked into a field and started talking to a horse, and eventually the horse told me to F off, so I went home. You know, typically British, very funny, just amazing guy. Meanwhile, the big story this morning is all about migrants once again. The front page of the Times, PM's fear for summer of riots in fraying UK. And fraying, of course, has got the old quotes around it. Downing Street officials say Britain is fraying at the edges. The Prime Minister told the Cabinet it's vital to repair the country's social fabric and improve integration in areas that have experienced high levels of migration. Hello? Oi! Starmer, you complete plonker. It's been like this for quite a long time. It's certainly been like this since last summer. And if it's taken you 12 months to figure it out, what is wrong with you? Also, of course, last night we saw another hotel in Canary Wharf in London being commandeered for the use of migrants only. People being turned away who actually had reservations to stay there. Absolutely unbelievable. Also, we've got some great footage of Rachel Reeves, who clearly does not know what she's doing. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Very good morning to you and welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Theo Usherwood is here. Theo, very good to see you. Very good morning. I just want to kick off with Ozzy Osbourne. I know there's very important political stories to talk about, but he is one of the great sort of Britons, isn't he?
He is.
And the fact that he gets a full page tribute on the front page of the Sun, going into pages 2, 3, 4 and 5, tells you all you need to know about what a sort of titan he was, because not only did he sell 100 million albums, which is an awful lot of records and an awful lot of money, he sort of reinvented himself, or Sharon reinvented the family, as the first sort of proper sort of reality TV show, The Osbournes.
It was the funniest show, wasn't it? It was crazy.
Yeah.
And the dogs that... all I remember are the dogs that just sort of ran riot and defecated everywhere, and the chaos that it caused.
Yeah, and it was always, you know, Ozzy kind of going, no, the dog's doing now.
But I think, you know, they don't make that like that anymore. Them like that anymore when it comes to Ozzy Osbourne. And my reaction was the same as you. I mean, 76. You know, you might see it so young, but my wife and I just turned to each other and thought, how did he last so long?
Yeah.
You know, given everything everything that he everything that he got up to in his life, to get to 76, I'd say he's got to be made of titanium.
He's done pretty well, yeah. And of course, it comes just a few weeks after he did, and maybe it was that kept him going. He wanted to do one final show.
People were saying he looked frail, didn't they?
He was sitting in a sort of throne, wasn't he, for most of it. I don't think he could stand, and he only did 5 songs, and it was at Villa Park, and it was, you know, his sort of spiritual home in Birmingham. But as I say, I never met him, I didn't know him, I never saw Black Sabbath in concert, but their music kind of spanned movies. It was around for a long time. And Sharon I got to know very well, and she was amazing. She was very funny. We worked together quite closely for a period of about 6 or 7 months, and she was great fun.
But he also cracked America, because so many pop British musicians, they all dream of America.
Yeah. But in some ways, much bigger in America. I mean, you go to America and, you know, you go into any town, and they've got a rock station, and normally either the country station is #1 and the rock station is #2, you know, and they've got a speech station somewhere over here. But I mean, you know, the power of radio, music radio particularly in America, is incredible. And you will hear Black Sabbath being played more there probably than anywhere else in the world, you know.
Page 3, Jane Moore, Sun columnist, who's friends with the Osbournes, got a really, you know, I guess her tribute to Ozzy is worth reading, and she talks about, of course, the progression of Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
But pointing out that he always kept his sharp wit, and humour, and
very much always a brummie, really.
Yeah,
you know, because, you know, once you've got that accent, he never leaves you, does it?
And it was part of, as you say, it was part of the whole appeal of that fantastic television show, was that sort of thick Birmingham accent, which just came out as he exploded in a fit of pique.
In this rather slightly incongruous Hollywood mansion, where you're kind of going, why is he not living in a sort of 2 up, 2 down in Wolverhampton? You know,
look,
that's what it sounds like.
It's really it's tremendously sad, but I mean it's certainly a life well lived. I mean,
totally. And hopefully somebody, probably won't be the BBC, but somebody will actually do a decent documentary about Ozzy, and we'll put it out there hopefully before the weekend. It won't be the BBC. He's not woke enough for them, obviously. Let's talk about the state of play in terms of Downing Street, in terms of the country, because, you know, we were, many of us, glued last night to social media, watching what was unfolding in Canary Wharf.
I know that hotel.
I know it.
It's a nice hotel.
Well, it didn't used to be a nice hotel. I mean, when I stayed there many, many years ago when I worked for the Mirror, it was like one of the few hotels that was in Canary Wharf that you could stay in. And Britannia is one of those chains which is not exactly, shall we say, salubrious in a lot of parts of the country. And it's also a chain that has used quite a lot of their hotels for migrants in the past, but seemingly last night people were turning up to go and check in, having booked hotel rooms there because they're coming to visit London, only to be told, sorry, the hotel's closed.
Yeah, and it's out of control at the moment.
It really is.
And
there is a sense that it's just careering over a cliff, doesn't it?
Yeah, and
the whole country is not in. Nobody's in charge of it.
It feels like things are rapidly descending into a point of that somebody needs to get a grip really quickly. Yeah. Whether it's and you've said it, and I'll be honest with you, Mike. I've listened. Sometimes you said we've kind of come on on a Wednesday. Yeah. I thought you said we're on the brink of something. I thought, oh, okay, and then you said it a few last couple of weeks, and I thought, yeah, there's more to this. Yeah. And then Farage said it on Monday. Yeah. And now, the more, especially around that time with the welfare reforms and the fact those welfare reforms failed, means that the Chancellor's going to have to put up taxes. Yeah. And I just don't think what we're going to see in the summer with the small boats arriving, they don't have the answers. We've got some sort of sanctions regime coming in for the people smuggling gangs today. That's not going to make the blindest bit of difference. And unless there's a sort of sea change in the way that they're approaching the country right now, and I think Angela Rayner, funnily enough, but of course she's not in charge, has her finger closer to the diagnosis of how serious things are than anybody else, namely Keir Starmer.
I mean, I'm looking at what is called a readout from the Cabinet yesterday, in which she's addressing them almost as though, she doesn't actually believe that she's a part of the problem. No. She thinks that she's telling them what they should be doing. And it says here, the Deputy Prime Minister said, economic security, the rapid pace of deindustrialisation, immigration and the impacts on local communities and public services, technological change and the amount of time people were spending alone online and declining trust in institutions and having a profound impact on society. She said it was incumbent on the government to acknowledge the real concerns people have and to deliver improvements to people's lives in their communities. I'm sorry, isn't she supposed to be the Minister for,
She is the Minister for Communities. That's her department.
Isn't she supposed to then be doing something about this, I mean, like I said this yesterday, somebody needs to go. We spoke to one of the mums down there in Epping, and I said, what's your message to Keir Starmer? And she was like, come and see us, come and talk to us, come and listen to us, and come and know what our problem is with all these migrants living in our community. And nobody from the Labour government has been down to Epping to look at what's going on. No. And if they don't do that, then they will remain out of
free
touch.
School meals.
And they will remain, free breakfast clubs. Breakfast clubs. No, that's not going to help. Yeah. That doesn't make any difference to people's lives. Go and speak to the people who are currently suffering. They're not just in Epping. They're now in London, at Canary Wharf. They're now in Diss, in Norfolk. There will be other places where people will rise up and start demonstrating against these migrant hotels because they are a blight on Britain. There's no question about that. And I don't care whether these people are coming here because, they're fleeing from war or famine or whatever the hell it is supposed to be fleeing from. They're not welcome here. There's too many of them and they need to leave. Simple as that.
Yeah, it needs
right?
they need the small boat crossings need to stop.
Yeah.
And the Sun did the front page of people, the migrants outside hotels with e-bikes delivering food. Not a job. The biggest response. We'll have a meeting next week with the delivery companies. Yeah. And I think there's an announcement out today.
Well, there's a piece in the Sun.
Operational.
There's a piece in the Sun today saying that basically the food companies will now be informed of whether the riders are actually staying in migrant hotels, and if they are, then they won't be allocated any work. But it's a great victory for the Sun, but it's a small step. And they've got a piece by Keir Starmer. We will stop at nothing to tackle illegal migration, he says. So this week we have delivered a world first, a new sanctions regime to target the vile people smuggling gangs.
But the problem here, the problem here is you've got the picture in the Sun, page 8 and 9 of the Sun, right? And you've got somebody being, you know, a delivery driver, so in quotes, being asked to, you know, produce some sort of proof that he has right to work in this country. And the problem is that this individual will most likely be in a hotel. He'll be stopped by these border force or immigration control, immigration enforcement officers. Then you would think arrest him, and then there is nowhere, because the prison system is broken, and there is nowhere to put him, and they are not prepared to look at, and this is what Farage was making the point on.
And they
Monday.
can't deport him, can they?
And they can't deport him. He's then released on bail, and he goes back to his hotel, he'll go back onto the app, and he can start working again. And it just goes round and round, and there's no...
Well, because guess what? People that do things illegally tend to continue to do things illegally. You don't stop them by saying that's against the law. In the same way that people smuggling gangs are not going to go, oh God, I didn't know we were breaking the law. We better stop doing it. No. You know, they know what the law is. They're very good at getting around it.
There is, and the only time a detention facility can be used, and this is from my understanding from speaking to people who have worked in this area, the only time it's ever used is when somebody is about to be deported back to the Home Office. They run the course of action towards the end, and then they go into a holding, you know, facility, and then they are deported from the country, and that is obviously to stop them fleeing or whatever, or evading you know, immigration enforcement. But you're not going to catch. This is you know, and yes, it's a victory for the Sun, but compare and contrast with the reaction that Emmanuel Macron got when he came over and said, by the way, you've got too many pull factors here. Everybody jumped up and down and said there's going to be a national task force. I don't understand I don't understand why Number 10 can't listen to the front page of the Sun, but can listen to Emmanuel Macron.
I know. The trouble is they're tone deaf about everything because they live in a bubble. They don't understand what's going on. I mean, let's have a look at what Starmer put out yesterday, right? He retweeted one of his own tweets from January, right, about tracking down these smuggling gangs and stopping them from doing anything. Have a look at this.
I'm absolutely determined that we're going to stop people crossing the channel in small boats. That is being run by gangs who are making a huge amount of money from the vile trade of people smuggling and getting them into those boats. And I was chief prosecutor for 5 years, and one of the things that I learned then was, if you're going to smash a gang that's driven by money, follow the money.
So that was in January that he learned that. It's now July, 6 months later. Nothing's changed. In fact, if anything, there's more people coming than ever.
Yes.
So you can follow the money all the way to the bank and go, oh, look how much money they're making. What are we going to do about it? I don't know.
It's 23,000 migrants across the channel so far in 2025. It's going to hit 50,000.
It will hit
this
50.
Year.
It's nearly hit 50 since Labour got in July of last year. You know, it's bigger than ever. The numbers are increasing every single day. We have 1,000, I think, in the last 4 days. There's no reason.
Why would they stop?
Why? There's no reason to stop coming.
And there's no prospects that you will see that suddenly the people will stop crossing the Mediterranean to come into Europe. And then I think from the surveys and the surveys, the figure I heard quoted again on the French side was that a third of migrants who cross into Europe want to come to this country, to the UK, because they see this place as being where they can
El Dorado, as it was described by a French politician. Let's have a look at what you said. And the other indicator for me as to how troubled this government is and this country is was Keir Starmer's appearance before the liaison committee, which was woeful. You know, I had Dan Hodges on yesterday, absolutely couldn't believe his eyes or ears, you know, and this is a man who started off, we're looking for the clip, we're going to find it before the next time he comes on. You know, this time last year, talking in great terms about how great this government was going to be, you know, grown-up policies, grown-up people that weren't going to be sleazy, people that weren't going to be, you know, borrowing clothes from people or glasses, glasses, for all of that. And now he's worse than me. You know, he wants Starmer out, like literally by this afternoon. But this is what he said to the liaison committee, and I'm not going to be harsh on him because I know that the way things sometimes come across, they don't sound right. But he shouldn't have done this, and this is when he laughed about last summer and missing his holiday. Check it out.
Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you for your time. We hope you get a bit of a break over the summer.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I say that hopefully every time.
I
every
thought
Prime
that at the beginning of the summer holidays last time, but it didn't work. So I'm not saying anything
Thank
this
you
time.
very
A bad look because unfortunately the reason why he didn't get a summer holiday last summer was because 3 little girls were murdered in a horrific, brutal, ghastly way by a scumbag who's now in prison. And he then had to, preside over a bunch of riots that went on as a result of that. It's not really something to laugh about.
No, it's not.
So he got that tone completely wrong.
And he was asked about extra, claimed there was sort of more accommodation for asylum.
Oh my God, that was the most ridiculous thing.
Right. They've got that feeling of Starmer when he appeared before the liaison committee in December, and if I remember correctly, he said that it was all going swimmingly. There wasn't anything that he would change about his first 6 months in office.
Right.
And if you're not realising the gravity of the problem, if the man at the top, isn't realising the gravity of the problem, then the problem really is very serious.
Yeah.
Because unless
he doesn't seem to be getting it. He doesn't seem to grasp it.
And it's not just what we're going to see. I think the real danger is, and we saw Rachel Reeves in front of a Lords committee yesterday, refusing to walk.
We're going to be playing some of that in a minute.
So
that's horrendous.
I don't want to spoil the gloom, but there's a real danger we'll face an economic moment where basically the economy crashes in the autumn. And because the Prime Minister isn't willing to press ahead, and the Chancellor isn't willing to press ahead with spending cuts, they only want to put up tax rises. And I'll make a prediction here.
Right.
I think there's going to have to come a point in the autumn where you'll have the pressure from the people that we'll see over the summer. You'll then have a budget. You'll see the markets just lose their marbles in the square mile. And I think Starmer and Reeves are going to have to go cap in hand to the Tories and say, I know there's going to be a rebellion on our side, but we need your support to get over these spending cuts over the line, because otherwise the economy is just going to fall to bits.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to come back.
I think it is.
They're going to have to come back not just with 5 billion. I think they're going to have to be much more ambitious, because they're going to have to get Kemi Badenoch and the Tories to sign up to it. But I think they're going to have to come back with a package of cuts that will assuage the markets and assuage the money men and women, that actually they've got the public finances under control and that they can bring them under control. You almost see something close to a sort of vague pact between the Tories and Labour to bring the public finances under control, because that's the only way that I can see right now of getting through this. They cannot do it with tax rises.
It's a disaster. The whole thing is a disaster. I mean, literally, you might as well tear it all up and start again. That's the state of this government.
And then once that happens, his authority.
Forget about all of the things that you know about the way that politics works, right? Forget about all of that, because we're way beyond that now. We're like, look at this from Rachel, who says, "Looking at those photos of the Britannia Hotel last night, this is in Canary Wharf, was boiling my blood. I can't afford to go on holiday, yet these migrants get to stay in this lovely hotel. How much more of this are we expected to take?" That's what people feel like.
But
that's
Rachel,
how they feel.
Rachel's the crucial point about what Rachel says there is, she's suffering. Her family is feeling the pinch,
and they're telling us, "Oh, we'll have to put taxes up,
and we're going to have to pay tax rises." And at the same time, we are spending millions of pounds each day on these hotels,
asylum seekers, and it's not something that people want to pay for. People will say, "Look, we understand sometimes, you have the boom and bust years, sometimes you have bad things that happen. You have COVID, for example. People have to be supported working from home, not going to a job and all of that. Yes, people get that, don't like it, but they get it. But they're not paying for this. But they're not paying more taxes for this.
No, and at the same time, they're being told that they rode back on the winter fuel allowance. The winter fuel allowance, as we were talking about the spending cuts. Their bills, their energy bills, which are having to go up to pay for net zero. There's another story about that in the papers today to pay for nuclear, and that is just causing this real grievance for millions of people, ordinary people up and down the country, who are just fed up.
They are. We're going to go and take a little break, but first, a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. Hope you're okay, buddy. It's Andy from Birmingham. It doesn't matter. Every single day they come out with all this bull and word salad about what they're going to do. We're going to smash the smuggling gangs. It's all bull. Everybody knows it's all bull. They won't do anything about it at all. They've got no will. I mean, half of us in the country knows what at least would stop it is you build a facility on Salisbury Plain or something at the moment. You know, the Greeks are doing it. Get the troops to build it, a bit like a Camp Bastion style, you know, feed them, a health service for them, and then as soon as they land on that beach, you give them an option to go back, or they go in there, and if they haven't got passports or anything, they'll never be considered. And then France need to be told they're having them back. One, you know, if we create a bit of a thing with France, that's fine, you know. They need to be told. Things will have to happen, because I think it's getting to a point now, mate, where something's going to burst here. Anyway, great show, buddy.
Yeah, you can literally feel the tension, I think, in the country just by walking around. You can feel it.
And Andy makes a point there. He says, you know, you create and this is to Emmanuel Macron's point, right? You create a facility where if you arrive on the beaches, there is a facility there. It can be perfectly humane. You can have healthcare. You could have.
I don't want it to be humane. You know, sorry, I don't want it to be humane.
Okay.
Forget the humane crap, okay? No more humanity. You know, we need to stop these bloody people coming here, and we have to stop welcoming them, and we have to stop making it nice for them, right? Make it bloody. Let them crawl over barbed wire for all I care when they get to the beach, you know? Seriously, that's how people feel.
Yeah.
I know you're a much more civilised individual than I am, but I'm fed up with it. I'm not having it anymore. Anyway, listen, we're going to take a break, 6:25, before I start swearing. This is Talk.
And he was a showman and remained a showman till, well, as we see, his dying day. It's very sad.
Very sad. And his big hit, the big Black Sabbath hit, was Paranoid. I know one lyric from it. Happiness I cannot feel, for love to me is so unreal. I don't know why I remember that, but I do.
Well, I think that's the one which begins, finished with my woman because she wouldn't help me with my mind or head, I forget which.
Damn good song though, Paranoid. Damn good song.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:28. I'm Mike Graham. The UK is stuck in some horrific Groundhog Day death loop, says Sean in Gloucester. Keith Starlin and his incompetent cronies find new ways every bloody day to make things worse. If it's not the economy, it's immigration or lies or scandals. How on earth can they make such a mess of everything? And that's kind of where we are. Let's have a look at Rachel Reeves, right? She was in front of the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee. And, I mean, if you ever wanted to wonder why we say that this woman is not really qualified to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, check out this performance, right?
At the same time, we also have a challenging economic inheritance with high levels of tax as a share of GDP, historic high levels of government debt, and then also economic growth that really for the last 15 years has been very poor by historical standards because of the weak productivity growth that we've experienced in that period of time.
I mean, if you were going to university for the first time and that was your lecturer, you'd ask for your money back. I mean, she doesn't even have the ability to explain the state of the economy without sounding like somebody who's literally reading it off a sheet for the first time in her life.
She doesn't sound confident.
She's not confident.
She doesn't sound like she's got all of the information she needs to have at her fingertips. What I found slightly astonishing by that performance in front of the Lords Committee yesterday was that, obviously when Rishi Sunak was in government, tax hit 35% of GDP.
Yeah.
And it was a 70-year high, the highest the tax burden had been since the end of the Second World War. And Labour hopped up and down and said this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
People are paying ever more.
And it was time for an election,
taxes,
right?
Time for an election, all the rest of it. The tax burden now is 38% as a share of GDP.
Well, we're going to be talking to Liam Halligan later on. He's worked out that it's the debt in this country now is 43,000 per person. 43,000 quid, which is more than most people's annual salary.
Astonishing. And there was no sense, there was never a moment in that appearance in the front of the Laws Committee yesterday where she said, actually, I want taxes to come down.
No.
I criticise the Tories for many things. At least they wanted to cut taxes.
Of course. And also, to go back to the main problem, the migrant problem is the biggest problem this country has had and will have for the foreseeable future. And the reason why people are now not willing to pay any more tax is because they can see where their money's going.
Yeah.
Billions and billions of pounds a year to pay for these bloody people coming in. Let's have a listen to what Linda's got to say.
So there are...
Morning, Mike. Linda from Worcestershire here. Starmer is not going to be the man or the PM to stop the small boats. The only thing that will stop the small boats are, as Macron said, unfortunately, the pull factors. So Starmer being the lawyer that took the government to court all those years ago to make sure migrants got benefits and everything else, he is not going to change the pull factors. He will just fanny around the edges and do nothing at the end of the day.
Yeah. And what about this story in the front page of the Telegraph? An extraordinary tale, which I tweeted about last night. Police have admitted escorting pro-migrant protesters to an asylum hotel that has been at the centre of days of volatile demonstrations. This is outside of the Bell Hotel in Essex, right? At the time, the police denied doing it, even though they were filmed doing it by a series of, what you might call citizen journalists. We're getting one of them on a little bit later on. Basically, they initially denied bringing these activists from Stand Up to Racism to the Bell Hotel, but they literally delivered them to the venue so that they could
have a counter
protest against the ordinary people who were saying, we don't want these scumbags in our town. One of them has been accused of sexual assault, which he denies, and he's going through the court process, so we won't get into that. But in the end, dozens of protesters were brought by the police to the venue and then taken back again in police vans to the station so they could go back to London. And they've now admitted that they did it. And you just think, what sort of world are we now living in? What are these idiots doing? What's wrong with them?
I just don't understand the mindset. I mean, the assistant chief constable, this guy called Stuart Hooper, is saying that the police have a reasonable duty to protect people who want to exercise their rights. But comparing...
No, he says in terms of bringing people to the hotel, the police have a duty to facilitate free assembly.
Yeah.
What does that mean then? So if I ring the police up and go, excuse me, what do you want to report? A burglary? No, I'd like you to take me to Trafalgar Square where there's a Black Lives Matter protest going on because I'd like to protest against it. Would you mind giving me a lift? What do you think they'd say?
No,
really?
But that's not even like a hypothetical, Mike. You saw what happened with the Saturday afternoon protests in central London for pro-Palestinian protests. The Jewish community literally organised counter-protests, and they were prevented from getting anywhere near them. And indeed,
they weren't put in police buses and taken so that their assembly could be facilitated.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
They received a very hostile reception from the police.
So the police in Essex have admitted, basically, to enabling a potential riot to take place. Brilliant.
Yeah,
this is now their policy. Yeah, because if you're policing, generally speaking, tells you that you keep people apart, they've actually deliberately put them together.
So the easiest way to do for the police to manage this the protest in Epping is just to have one protest and manage that one protest about, you know, for people who are very unhappy about the hotel, the Bell Hotel being used as an asylum hotel. That's the far easiest thing for those police officers to do. To suddenly say, OK, well, we're going to now go and find this other group. We're not just going to, they're going to ring us up, we're going to go and collect them from the train station, we're going to deliver them. That makes the job of the officers on the ground infinitely harder because they've not only got to stop the protesters who are very unhappy about the hotel, they've then got to stop the protesters hitting each other.
No, hang on, the protesters were peaceful protesters. They were not problematic protesters. It was only when they started to deliver the lefties that suddenly it kicked off.
Of course it's going to kick off.
So they actually facilitated a riot, a near riot. And 6 people were arrested, police officers were hurt, you know, people were throwing bottles and bricks. And why do you think people were angry? Maybe because they saw the police delivering these bozos from the left into the fray.
Or they're being wound up.
Into the fray.
And they're being
just incredible. Just incredible. You can't quite believe that this is the way that they think they should be behaving. And they're paid by the taxpayer, by the way. Again, another example of what's wrong with this country, where the people who are paid by us think that we have no right to question what they do, and who think that they can push us around, despite the fact that we pay for their very bleeding existence.
And there are many, and it also puts in danger the police officers on the ground. I mean, this is obviously a decision that's been taken by some...
Well, according to the cops, it was the individual officers on the ground that made the decision.
Oh, rubbish.
I mean, it is rubbish. It's complete balderdash. Also, what sort of, you know, idiots are they who first of all deny it and then admit that they were lying? They've literally admitted they were lying. That's the police in this country. Is it any wonder that people throw bricks at them?
This is the same.
And I'm saying that throwing bricks at the police is a very bad idea, and you shouldn't do it. Yeah. But if they're going to continue to lie to the public, if they're going to continue to enable people to turn up at protests in order to cause trouble, then I'm afraid they've stopped being police. They're now activists, and then they're in a bad place.
But you know, Essex Police, Mike, have they have a track record of this stuff. This is the same force that arrested Alison, was investigated Alison Pearson.
Alison Pearson, yeah.
Who, after she allegedly posted a racist tweet online, and of course they had to drop that.
And she's suing them.
Yeah.
And let's hope she is.
I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah.
This from Stephen, who says, in Cornwall, morning Mr Graham, the Conservatives, Labour and even the Liberals have managed in the last 10 years to hoodwink the British public by clumping together illegal and legal migration that is now exposed to the public, that actually all 3 parties are now in a totally untenable position, and only a new election can save the UK from the collapse of UK society. And this is what I've been going on about since last summer. It's coming. It's definitely coming. There will have to be an election in this country because people will no longer have faith in the government or the police, and they will not do what they're told anymore. And so you've basically got anarchy. You'll have anarchy on the streets.
We don't want that.
No, we don't want it. But that's what they've encouraged. And the police, by issuing this statement and being on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, have proven themselves to be worse than useless as supposedly upholders of the law. Yeah. They're encouraging people to break the law. What's wrong with them?
They've just got their priorities completely wrong. I'd love to say it's just a one-off, but it's not.
Every public body in this country has got their priorities wrong. Look at the NHS. Yeah. You go, a BMA strike going on, British Medical Association. They're going on strike. They've said that it's going to be harmful to patients. They've admitted that it's going to cost at least $250,000 admissions to hospital to be dropped, and for all sorts of incalculable procedures to be stopped and cancelled. They've admitted as well that basically it's going to cost, I think, 87 million quid for this 5-day strike, and yet they're going ahead anyway. They don't care.
No.
So you've got a health service that doesn't care about the health of the nation. You've got a police service that doesn't care about actually upholding the law. You've got a government that doesn't know what to do about illegal migration and people coming to this country, taking money from literally the pockets of ordinary hard-working people, right? You've got Ed Millipede going around telling everybody that their bills are going to go down. They're going up again now to pay for Sizewell B. You know, is there anything that is working in this country? I don't think so.
No, there's not. There's not.
You and I sitting in this studio about the only thing that's working properly. There are people in other studios who are making a complete hash of it. You know, not mentioning any names.
Look, there's no that. People will pay, and this was the calculation, right, that Keir Starmer made. People will pay for extra, if they get extra, if they see stuff working. That was the whole plan, right?
Yeah.
But there was a danger. Let's just take as one example the health service. If you go and give them a 22% pay rise off the back, these are the junior doctors now called residence doctors. If you go and give them that money off the back, if you go and spend, give the train drivers £14 billion, guess what? They're going to come back and ask for more.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep on asking for more.
Particularly if you don't give them any conditions after giving them the money. The train driver's got no conditions. They're still doing this ridiculous, I can't walk 100 yards to the front of the train. No, sorry, we won't be able to run that train. They're still doing all that crap.
But they should have made it, they should have either they may have had to have legislated for it, but they needed to put some clauses into that pay rise, which means that you can't just come back a year later and ask for more money.
Yeah.
Because we've now got a 5-day strike, which is going ahead on Friday, which is going to cause chaos.
People will die as a result. We've said it before, the last time they were on strike, and it happened before, and it will happen again.
But
they don't care.
If they should have worked out from the BMA whether the junior doctors, when it came to the pay rise last year, and they were going to go on strike again, and the sensible thing to do was, okay, you're going to go on strike again, you're not getting this pay rise.
Yeah.
You're not getting this pay rise.
I would fire all of them. Just get rid of them, because the NHS is on its arse anyway. Because these people can't help it.
There's no money to pay for it.
No.
They haven't got the cash to pay for it.
Well, but also they're going to have less cash as a result of this, because it's 87 million quid later. That's what the cost of the strike is going to be. They're asking also, believe it or not, for £6,000 per weekend for a shift. That they want to pay people that have to cover for them. So when consultants come in, £6,000. So £3,000 a day they want for Saturday and Sunday cover for this weekend. That's what their stipulation is to West Streeting. Unbelievable stuff. This from Sean, who says, who it is from Essex Police decides to ferry masked far-left agitators to and from the station should be sacked today, says Sean from Bridlington. I said this last night in a tweet. Mark says from Croydon, any chance the police can also take me to the football next season? I'd quite like a police escort to the North London derby. Law and order's broken down. Why should anybody pay attention to what the police say after this, right? The police say, come on now, what's going on here? Hello, hello, hello. Why don't you get yourself back to where you're supposed to go? Oh, really? Well, why don't you take those people who you've just delivered here back to where they're supposed to go? Who's going to pay attention to the police now?
No, I take your point. This is one force, Mike. I'd always say if you're confronted by a police officer...
Doesn't matter. People see the police as one thing. Whether it's London, Essex, Yorkshire, Liverpool, Merseyside, Scotland, nobody cares. They'll say, you, the police, have broken the law, you've enabled people to come and demonstrate because you sympathise with their view. And that, I'm afraid, is not the police's job.
No, it's not. I'm a little bit sort of lost for words.
It's good. I like it when you get lost for words. Hold that thought. I'll let you give it some time. I'll come back to you. It's 6:42. Me and Theo Usherwood back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:44. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We're going to speak to Steve Denyer very shortly from Virgin Radio about Ozzy Osbourne. We're going to get his take on it all. Morning, Mike and Theo, says Jan from Newcastle. I would go so far as to say the biggest problem in this country is and has been dishonesty. MPs, civil servants, councillors, social workers, police, they have done it for years. We all knew it. Thank you for keeping pointing out the lies. I'd vote for you, Mike, for Prime Minister. Yeah, listen, I'm much better off sitting here. I mean, there's no way that they would take me as a Prime Minister. Ellie says this: I'm one of the concerned nanas that goes to the protest in Epping, the town that raised me. Thank you for telling the truth. You should have seen them in their riot gear. Embarrassing and comical. Anyway, I'll be there again Thursday and Sunday. And this is the thing. We know that there's going to be more demonstrations. Yeah. There's going to be one on Thursday. There's going to be one at the weekend. You know it's going to kick off, you know, because you just know it is. And then now, with the knowledge that we now have that the police enabled these far-left nutters to come and demonstrate as well, what do you think the effect of that is going to be?
I don't know if there's anybody sensible in the Home Office, but if there is somebody sensible in the Home Office...
Doesn't seem to be.
Then I hope they put in a phone call to Essex Police and say, do not bring people to these...
for God's sake, no.
But if you think, you also think back to last summer, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, but I seem to remember that towards the latter stages of that summer of discontent where there were riots, groups were organising to organise counter-protests, and the police were sort of hoping that there'd be this sort of outpouring which would nullify the riots. But it's a powder keg.
It is. And let's not forget what we now know, which we didn't know last summer, is that all of the places where the riots took place were places where an awful lot of Afghan refugees have been put, right? And that's now that's a matter of record because the Cabinet Office have confirmed that. But
we weren't told about it, of course.
But we weren't told. It kept it secret from us, you know? I mean, unbelievable. Let's talk about just one little minor triumph for me, personally, and also for Nick Freeman, the lawyer, because a piece in the Mail today says that licence plates and speed limits are going to curb the e-scooter surge. E-scooter riders can be forced to display licence plates, pass the test and have insurance under a proposed crackdown aimed at restoring order to the streets. Presume. I mean, we put a petition into Parliament which was rejected, right? Because they said, we've already got one that's a bit like that, so we don't really need it. So now, finally, they've realised that actually we were right all along and they need to put, licence plates on these scooters.
Of course they do, and these e-scooters...
Because they're too dangerous.
They can go at 50 miles an hour. And you see people riding them on the pavement.
A guy went past me yesterday, right, as I was on my way home from the show, in a cycle lane. He must have been doing 50 on a bike. It wasn't a scooter, but it was one of these electric bikes. And I thought, if I literally stepped into that road by mistake or happened to get off a bus and not been looking, you're dead. And
you've got the combination of these e-scooters, criminals using them to snatch mobile phones, to mug people, and then the combination of the lower traffic neighbourhoods with those, very large flower pots, which mean that you can't drive cars down them, and then you have gates.
You can if you move them. Top tip.
If you
move them out of the way.
If you have a key to a gate, but it means that the police can never catch up with them.
No, of course not.
No, they can. So once they've snatched a phone, they can't run after them, they can't chase after them, and they don't have the ability to get them.
Yeah. One final one. This is great. This is also in the Sun. Forest Green Ravers. Right. This is Dale Vince's football team. My favourite eco-centric man. The other day he signed up to a deal with some doctor who said if you're suffering from depression, we will actually prescribe going to see the football. If you go to see the football with them wearing these tops, I have to say, they're Dayglow leopard print kits, rave clothing, they're in the National League, unbelievable, just horrible. I mean, if you feel depressed, if I were you, stay well away from Forest Green Rovers, or Ravers, as it were. Anyway, welcome to Steve Denyer.
Good morning,
here.
Mike.
Very good morning to you, Steve. Nice to see you. Front page of the Sun pretty much says it all. The wonderful wizard of Ozzy. I don't think anyone... I mean, we were all sort of slightly taken aback and shocked last night when the news came out, Ozzy Osbourne dead at the age of 76. But what a character! What a great British eccentric, if nothing else.
One of the absolute best.
Yeah.
I think the shocker, when I heard it on Talk last night, was the fact that it's just 2 weeks ago he did that final gig at Villa, and Villa Park, he looked unsteady, but there's a man who gave it his all. I mean, what a finale!
Yeah,
that massive show, and you know the family were there, the friends. He was on stage a couple of miles from his childhood home as well.
Right.
An incredible human being.
Yeah.
I mean, a 50-year career in rock. Lots of people didn't know how he lasted that long. He was apparently once tested for superhuman DNA. Because they're like, how the hell are you still alive?
Yeah.
You know, here's a guy who was sacked by Black Sabbath for his drug taking.
Right.
And the rest of them were hardly, saints. It had to be pretty bad. We were laughing earlier about some of the stories. There's a great kind of pull-out in the Daily Mail today, isn't there? About his most outrageous moments.
Right.
And they come one after the other.
He was the man that made it famous to bite the heads off chickens, to bite the heads off bats, and there was always a bit of a sort of mystery as to whether he was really doing it on stage. But the fact that he was even pretending to do it, or occasionally actually doing it, made him this kind of mythical figure, didn't it?
He said his epitaph will be, I was born in the 40s, I died whenever, and I was the guy that bit the head off the bat. And apparently it happened, he bit the head off a dove as well.
Right.
So he turned up to CBS Records as a kind of as a peace treaty, and he released some doves, and then again bit the head off it. I mean, it's totally
amazing.
Unbelievable.
I was talking to my oldest son who lives in California and who loves Black Sabbath, and he sort of walked me through a whole series of albums that I should listen to, which I did last night.
Yes.
And he told me the whole album, an album called Technical Ecstasy, amazing, always overlooked because of the late 1970s album, and also a bit of Finger Sleeping Village off the first album is actually probably my favourite song, again, which I didn't know about and I hadn't listened to. But his songs are in movies, his songs are all over the kind of the history of heavy metal. He was one of the first heavy metal kind of masters,
the pioneer, Mike. I would say actually it's really interesting. Let's not forget about the music. Do dip back into the back catalogue. We talk loads on Virgin Radio and Legends.
You're playing it all day today.
We are, yeah. I mean, if you listen to our station Legends, I would say go back to 1970, listen to the Black Sabbath album and Paranoid, and then gradually they get more and more bizarre and experimental. So you've got, the late 70s, you've got albums like Technical Ecstasy, but, really it became more and more creative as he became wilder and wilder. And of course, we can't forget there's a whole generation of people who know him from the Osbournes.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I said this to Theo earlier, it was the first sort of proper reality TV show, wasn't it?
We wouldn't have had the Kardashians without the Osbournes.
No.
Nobody had seen that kind of... Do you remember that MTV kind of fly-on-the-wall thing? Half of it, remember, was bleeped out.
Yeah.
And the other half, you couldn't really understand what else he was saying, apart from shouting Sharon.
Right.
But we loved it.
Sharon. Yeah. And she, as I said, I told Theo this, we got to know Sharon quite well during the time we were working together on talkTV, and she was amazing. I mean, she would just tell stories about... She knew everybody. She knew stories about Johnny Depp. She was friends with all the kind of, stars of Hollywood, Walk of Fame and all the rest of it. She talks about, lifting once flashing breasts at the gardener just for a laugh, and the kids are going, "Mum, put them away." It was all this kind of, amazing kind of world that they all lived in, and you have to feel sorry for Sharon because she loved it very much.
Our hearts go out to her, the family. I think she actually, lots of people saying that when he met her, she did save his life.
Yeah.
And things changed.
Right.
She was very much she loved him, but she also she managed him as well.
Yeah, she was an amazing woman. So listen, Steve, thank you so much. We'll listen to the songs later on, all the way through the day at Virgin. We'll be back with more from Theo and funny more stories from the papers as well, including some bad news for the Montecito Massive. Harry and Meghan. Apparently, their Netflix deal's been cancelled. Never mind. 6:52.
Labour government is using this ridiculous, in my opinion, and in Reform's opinion, this ridiculous policy of early release of prisoners because the prisons are full. That is not a solution. Why are we letting out dangerous criminals onto our streets, putting the public safety at risk because the prison places, there's not enough prison places? What we
build
should
them
be
then.
doing,
Build 10 more prisons. I don't get it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I've just been sent this by Mark, actually. 4 drivers needed for a 24-hour shift, 6 days, 5 days, £17.50 an hour, Home Office contract, moving immigrants and refugees. Pay weekly, driving triaxles and Plaxton Elite, must have a DigiCard, CPC card, must have a minimum 2 years experience driving. Triaxles, good knowledge of London will be an advantage. So they're going to be driving them into London, it would seem. This is an advert that's going around the coach drivers community for people to be paid £17.50 an hour to drive immigrants around. Great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Unbelievable. We've got so many of you wanting to say things about the state of our police. Tim in Cambridge. Hi, Mike. Our police are now officially a politicised force of the extreme left. Our public sector has been stealing a living from the taxpayer for decades, and the real British public have finally had enough. It really is. It's klaxon time.
Yeah.
You know, emergency.
Yeah,
everything's kicking off.
It's really serious.
And as if you wanted to know how crazy this world has become. How about this? There was a story last week. We made them plank of the week. A school near Rugby, which stopped a girl from a 12-year-old girl from going into class wearing a Union Jack dress. Right. Turns out, same thing has happened in a place called Sandwell Community Academy in Oldbury, West Midlands. Several young women were asked to wear outfits to reflect their heritage. The whole class was, but several young women, including Leanne Whirl, her 15-year-old daughter Isabel, draped flags over their shoulders, were held in meeting rooms and told you can't take part in the cultural day because of your Union Jack.
And then when Isabel questioned the decision, she ended up being suspended for 5 days for arguing.
Yeah. Lots wore their flags over their shoulders, others opted to wear them around their waists as skirts. Isabel was put into an isolation room almost immediately, as were about 30 other kids.
Including 13-year-old...
What is going on? Because they're wearing a Union
Scarlet
Jack.
Priest. She was just wearing a white T-shirt with a Union Jack on it.
What is wrong with the people who make these decisions? That would be my question. People who are in teaching positions, people who are running schools, people who are running the police, people who are running the train services, people who are running the NHS. You know, all of these people hate the Union Jack, hate Britain. You know, love immigrants. What's going on?
I don't understand. If you're going to have a culture day, then people can express their culture. And the Union flag.
We live in Britain, right?
It's part of our culture.
Our culture's
That's
British.
The flag.
It's not bloody Palestinian. It's not Pakistani. It's not Indian. Our culture is British. Thank you very much. Here's the Union Jack. It's our flag.
Yeah.
How dare you say you can't wear it? Unbelievable. Anyway, Susan Bristol says, I'm sick to bleeding death of this lot. The police are out of control, the government are out of control, the judiciary are out of control. It's not us, the British people are not out of control. It's all the bleeding morons who supposedly have control. Is it any wonder the lid has been blown off? I mean, this is serious stuff now. I mean, I'm getting this every day. People have had enough. And it's getting more and more intense.
But there's the reason it's getting worse, and the reason it's building, it's like the tension is building.
It's like a pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker.
Yeah. We got about 30 seconds.
It's because there's no answer to it.
Yeah. Well, there is an answer to it. There is an answer to it.
But they're not going to. They're not counting
bringing immigrants into the country.
They're not going to countenance that answer.
Deport them out of the country. and stop politicising everything.
When Keir Starmer did his last press conference on the small boats,
the man's an idiot.
And it gets to the last question. The last question is, do you take us out of the European Convention on Human Rights? And he says no.
Yeah.
It's a
well,
flat no.
He's going to have to start changing his mind or else he's out of a job. Anyway, we've got to run. Theo, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to A Morning Glory. It's coming up to 7:03. If you've missed the first hour, shame on you because it's been quite a good one. Even for me, I'd have to say. We've been commemorating, not so much celebrating, but certainly commemorating the death of Ozzy Osbourne. He's on all the front pages this morning. The wonderful Wizard of Ozzy, it says on the front page of The Sun. And, of course, the Ozzy Osbourne dies at home, surrounded by love at 76 on the front page of the Daily Mail. Front page of The Telegraph, Osbourne dies 2 weeks after his last concert. R.I.P. Ozzy on front page of the Daily Mirror. It's very much an international story, obviously. Rockstar dies at 76 on the front page of The Times, even, because he was more than just a heavy metal rock star. He was the pioneer of so much in the musical world, but also the pioneer of so much in television. You know, his wife Sharon was somebody that we knew very well here at Talk. She used to do all sorts of things. She used to host the show, The Talk, if you remember. It used to go out at 9 o'clock at night, which I used to do quite often, and became quite good friends with her. She was an amazingly funny and entertaining woman, knew everybody in showbiz that there was to know, and loved Ozzy. So we send send our best felicitations to her. I know she will be very, very sad at the news that her husband of many years has passed away. Meanwhile, we're talking about what can only be described as the death of the United Kingdom this morning, because we've got news for you about how even the government now and the cabinet have been discussing the fact that we might be entering a period of summer riots. You know, even as they move migrants around the country, they're asking for coach drivers to help move them around. They're commandeering hotels right, left and centre. Only last night, people were turned away from the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf, having booked to stay there because it's going to be now filled with migrants. You know? The unofficial figures are that there's about 200 of them coming from somewhere else. At one point it was thought they might be coming from Epping. That's not been confirmed, but so far what we do know is that basically there has been people moved into the Britannia Hotel and it's no longer open to the public. Basically, Britannia Hotel have not officially responded, but last night they told our reporter, I don't know if you're aware of what has gone on in Epping, but there are protesters here who aren't happy about it. Yeah, well, there are protesters at Epping, there are protesters in Diss, in Norfolk, there's going to be protesters all over the country. Even Angela Rayner has basically said it's incumbent on the government to acknowledge real concerns people have and to deliver improvements to people's lives in their communities. We are on a knife edge, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't apologise for saying that. You know, people say, oh, you shouldn't be encouraging, you know, people to be, you know, involved in some kind of insurrection or anarchy, but that's where we are. Let's get a voice note from Tim on the police.
Mike, please help me square this circle. Lucy Connolly is in jail for 2 and a bit years for apparently inciting violence and hatred or whatever it was she did, but the police are shipping people to protest against protesters. How is that not incitement of violence? It's actually trying to create it. Please help me make this make sense. Great show. Tim in Yorkshire.
This is Morning Glory. And that is the story this morning, because on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, the headline says, police take pro-migrant protesters to Asylum Hotel. Believe it or not, and I kid you not, this is not a spoof, this is not an April Fool. It turns out that the Essex police, who previously denied that this was true, have actually now admitted that they escorted pro-migrant protesters to an asylum hotel that was at the centre of days of volatile demonstrations. This, of course, is the Bell Hotel. We've been covering it all week. There have been demonstrations going on since last weekend, since last part of actually last week, basically. Leftists, you know, lefty activists, anti-racism types said that they were going to turn up coming on a train from London, because, of course, they don't live in Epping. The people who were demonstrating against the migrants staying in a hotel there are from Epping, and their mothers, their children, their fathers. There are people who are concerned about a sex attack that took place, which has been now resulting in the charge of a man who has denied doing it, but who has gone through the court system, but a man who was staying in the hotel. There is now actively community-based demonstrations going on, peacefully, by the way, completely peacefully. And instead of just allowing that to go ahead, the police, the Essex police, willfully escorted a group of left-wing activists to go and demonstrate against the mothers, against the children, and against the locals who live in that area, in order to do what exactly? To create tension, to create a violent situation, to make it possible for the police to put their right helmets on and start cracking a few heads. The result was there was violence. The result was, because of those other demonstrators, that other demonstrators from the right came in and started chucking things at the police. So Chief Constable Stuart Hooper said this: "We have a reasonable duty to protect people who want to exercise their rights. In terms of bringing people to the hotel, the police have a duty to facilitate free assembly." What on earth is going on in this country? Why are the police in some ways allowing or actually assisting and helping people to commit acts of violence? I don't understand what the police's role is in this. Maybe Ben Habib can help us. He's the leader of Advance UK. Ben, very good morning to you.
Morning. I'm not sure I can help you, Mike.
I mean, this is about as outrageous a story as I thought we had last week, when we found out that the government had been holding, you know, truths from us and taking out super injunctions, so that we never found out that they were smuggling tens of thousands of Afghan migrants into the country and not telling us about it, and putting them into houses, putting them into hotels. We've now got the police admitting that they've actually been assisting left-wing activists to go and cause trouble in a local town in Essex. It's unbelievable.
It takes two-tier policing to another level.
Seriously,
the police have effectively become activists themselves.
Yeah,
taking a position in the debate, and you call these people anti-racist demonstrators, left-wing anti-racist demonstrators. There's nothing racist about those who had congregated in Epping to protest against illegal migrants being settled in their otherwise peaceable town, one of whom assaulted a 14-year-old girl, allegedly assaulted a 14-year-old girl. And for the police to ship in these so-called anti-racists, taking by the description that they ascribe to these protesters, giving them the moral high ground by calling them anti-racist, removing the moral high ground for those who are legitimately protesting against illegal migrants. They are revealing themselves to have a view. Right. The police have a view on the subject, and the police should not have a view. The police should just be there to make sure that the demonstrations are peaceful, and they weren't. They were taking an activist position. And so we know precisely where the institutions of this country have got to now in their view on migration. And Angela Rayner's mealy-mouthed words talking about the need to take on board the concerns of communities, and it's incumbent on the government to take steps to, keep communities peaceful, etc. They absolutely under-egg the extent of the problem and what is now required. We need a 180-degree turn in the method by which this country is governed, starting with the end of mass migration and the absolute stopping of illegal migration, coupled with the deportation of everyone who is in this country illegally.
Well, it's a bit like throwing a bomb into a shop and then walking in later and going, it's just absolutely outrageous the way people have come in and taken things out of this shop and looted it, instead of actually addressing who set the bomb off, because it's the bomb that's the problem, and the bomb in this case is the migrants, right? And for Angela Rayner to say it's incumbent on the government to help the communities to sort all this out, she's supposed to be the Minister for Communities. It's her bleeding job, isn't it?
The government has got no inclination, no intention whatsoever to sort this out. As you said before I came on the programme, Keir Starmer has declared against removing the ECHR. Right. Well, the ECHR is at the heart of the problem here. It's the ECHR and its embodiment through the Human Rights Act in British law that removes the distinction effectively between what it means to be a British citizen and a migrant, which is why people find it, including our judicial system and police, find it so hard to find a balance. They struggle to find a balance between what is in the interest of British citizenry and what is in the interest of humanity at large. And they conflate the two. They're confused. They think that migrants should have absolutely the same right as British citizens, including on entering the country. So we don't even have the courage now to intercept their dinghies in the channel, stop them and tell them to go back to France. We are completely overridden by this extreme form of the ECHR, the Human Rights Convention, that is, infected our institutions and the way that we govern ourselves.
Yeah. But, it shouldn't do that, because there are no European countries that have anything like the kind of slavish, adherence to the ECHR as we do. Every single person in the judiciary here seems to think that the ECHR is the highest court in the world. It isn't. All they do is they make recommendations, which you can either follow or not follow. The Danish don't worry about the ECHR when they deport people back to the countries they came from. The Germans don't worry about it. Look at what the Greeks are doing. The Greeks are part of the European Union. They couldn't give us stuff. They're locking people up. They're detaining migrants coming onto their shores, and they've told them, if you come here illegally, we will put you in a detention centre and we will escort you militarily back to North Africa.
They're trying very hard, but even Meloni, who had, a relatively benign equivalent of the Rwanda plan, taking migrants to Albania where they could then apply for asylum to Italy, really quite a soft approach. Even she had the European Court interfere. I think it's not quite right to say that the court's rulings are only advisory. We have signed up to the court's rulings being binding in the United Kingdom on cases brought in the United Kingdom, which is why they can, defeat our domestic courts all the time. Though our domestic courts
Yes, but we didn't have to do that then, did we?
No, we didn't have to do that.
That was an act of self-harm that we could easily undo, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, there are 4 or 5 acts of parliament. But by the way, there are millions of acts of parliament that need to be repealed. But there are 4 or 5 that need to be repealed instantly if we want to restore some kind of semblance of common sense to the way this country is governed. And one of them is the Human Rights Act. It has to go. It is absolutely hijacked what it means to be British. It has removed our borders. It's given migrants exactly the same rights and privileges as a British citizen. And we've forgotten what it means to hold a British passport. These people are coming across here as if they had the same rights as we do. And indeed, with the other Act of Parliament that needs to be repealed, the Equalities Act, now have progressive discrimination in their favour. So that British citizenry stands by and watches while these people are given first run at everything, including our housing, NHS, etc. And as you say, it is going to result in violence. And the last thing we want is violence, because the government will use that as an excuse to become ever more draconian in the measures it uses to police us. 2-tier policing will go through the roof. We don't want violence, but the government needs to wake up and start doing what's right for the country, which means putting the national interest first. It's very simple, but they will not do it.
And it also means surely getting rid of some of the chief people at the top of the Essex Police Department who have made this decision. Let's have a look. We've got a clip from just the other day. Police busing counter-protesters back to the railway station after they've been demonstrating against local people in Epping. Have a look.
Buses. They're calling them buses. They're calling them buses. Wait, can you get me a bus back to my car, please? What time's the next bus? 5 on the last bus, okay? Buses. You know what they say? You wait 15 minutes for a bus and then 3 come all along at once. It's been another oh. That Epping stands against. Look, they're all cramming in. You got a spare bus down there? Make sure you got your bus passes.
Those are police vans being used to transport demonstrators, left-wing activists, back to the train station, which the police say is entirely within their remit. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, and I think the police do it because they think they're on the right side of the moral debate. But this is where the police have lost the plot. They're not meant to have a view on morality. They're meant to enforce the law. They're meant to be blind in the enforcement of the law, but they're taking the view that the so-called anti-racist protesters have the moral high ground and deserve the police's attention and support. That is not what the police are meant to be there for. But of course, the police are also taught progressive discrimination. The police, through their training, are taught that diversity, equity and inclusion, which is effectively the progressive discrimination in favour of ethnic minorities, is the right thing to do. Our court system is riddled with judges who believe the same thing. So even though I've mentioned repealing certain acts of parliament, including the Human Rights Act, actually what we are going to need, and you touched on it, Mike, is a complete re-education of our judiciary and our police. We need to reverse all the education that they've had over the last few years, which gives them the belief that they should be doing this kind of thing.
Right. But, I mean, in what world does this even happen? I mean, we've got the front page of the Times today. The Prime Minister is demanding urgent action from Cabinet Ministers to avoid a repeat of last summer's riotings. Well, it's not Cabinet Ministers who are going to stop the riots. It's people like the police making stupid decisions like this that are going to rile people up and who are going to next time see police and witness to them and say, you people are no longer the police. You are now activists, so we're going to attack you.
It's completely ludicrous, and we're seeing a collapse, effectively, of the United Kingdom. I'm going to change the subject slightly, but in the same week that Reeves has been shown to have borrowing completely out of control, she's announced a new spending scheme for people to switch their perfectly good cars to electronic vehicles. On the altar of the net zero ideology, she's exacerbating the economic problems we already have. It is these ideologies to which our government is wed, from which they will not deviate, that is so damaging our constitutional, cultural and economic fabric at every single level. The migration issue is obviously constitutional, cultural, and of a criminal justice nature, and the economic approach that they've got is similarly damaging. It doesn't manifest itself in violence. But I can tell you, when people become destitute, which is where this government is taking us, in part through mass migration, when people become destitute, they have no option but to get on the streets and show their anger against the government's policies that brought them to that position.
Right.
The government needs to start making decisions for the British national interest. And it can do it so easily. It could pivot easily overnight if it wished to. It would repeal the Human Rights Act. It would repeal the Equalities Act. It would say justice is blind. It would stop the boats in the channel and send them back. It would ditch net zero. You just do that alone, Mike, just what I've said out there, we would have a seismic improvement in the status of this country overnight.
Absolutely right. I've just got this from Tower Hamlets Council, believe it or not, and this is about the Britannia Hotel situation in Canary Wharf, which we talked about earlier. We are aware of the government's decision to use the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf to provide temporary accommodation for asylum seekers. It is important that the government ensures that there is a full package of support for those staying at the hotel. We are working with the Home Office and partners to make sure that all necessary safety and safeguarding arrangements are in place, which means, presumably, that they're going to send a lot of police down there to make sure whoever's demonstrating outside doesn't upset the migrants. Well, I'm sorry, it's a bit late for that because they were there last night. And the word is now spreading every time one of these hotels is commandeered, every time people turn up to a hotel and get told, I'm sorry, we haven't got a room for you, despite the fact you booked it 6 months ago, because we've now taken the place over for migrants. And people are sick to death of being told that they're going to have to pay more taxes to support all of this nonsense, right? Because it's costing billions and billions of pounds a year. And people might say, look, we understand that we're in trouble. We understand that you might have to tax us a little bit more. We might have to pay another 5% on our council tax. We might have another 1% on income tax. But they're not paying for this. They're not going to do it anymore.
Well, we've rehearsed this before, but they would gladly remove the support from pensioners for their heating bills. But they're putting these migrants up in £460 a night bedrooms in Canary Wharf and giving them protection. Our veterans sleep rough, many of them, suffering from all sorts of post-military mental health issues. And our government doesn't look after them, throws them under a bus, but will protect. Will house and then protect these people who are in this country illegally.
Yeah. Perhaps they'd like to pop down to All Bar One and have dinner on me. Maybe they could do that. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
40 years ago, Mike, when I was growing up, we called people who enter the country illegal aliens. Now we call them irregular migrants. It shows you how we've been hijacked. It shows you that change of language, shows you how the ideology of our governing institutions has changed so dramatically against the British national interest. They are illegal aliens. They are illegal aliens. They need to be called what they are and they need to be removed.
What the police should be doing is taking them and arresting them all and putting them somewhere like Wormwood Scrubs or Glastonbury or somewhere and putting them behind a fence and say, look, you're now being detained until we can work out how the hell to get you back to the country you came from. Because you're not welcome here, you don't belong here, and you've broken the law by getting into this country illegally. Simple as that.
100%. There has to be zero tolerance of the crime of breaking into the United Kingdom. Zero tolerance. And until we get there, we're going to see this kind of nonsense happening in the country.
Yeah, absolutely right. Ben, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK. Let's get a voice note from Daz on these buses.
You'd almost think that the police, the authorities, even the government, would want riots outside the migrant hotels. Crazy, I know, but you'd almost believe that's what they want to happen, Mike. So old Two-Tier can stand there going, far right thanks, far right thanks, and then bang everybody up for 3, 4, 5 years within a week, and they think that's it. End of that. Britain in 2025. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, Daz, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, lock up the people who don't want the illegal people to come here. That's a great idea, isn't it? How about you lock up the illegal people in the first place? And then there wouldn't be any chance for people to protest and there wouldn't be any riots. I mean, it's not difficult, this stuff. This from Jeremy. The Chief of Police in Essex says it's his duty to facilitate freedom of expression. Since when has it been his duty to provide a bus service for those wanting to express their view? Can I call the police when I want a bus so that I can go and counter-protest against the Palestine supporters? Yeah, good luck with that, Jeremy. One from Craig. How can it be right when they protested for Gaza, police arrested pro-Jewish counter-demonstrators, but when people protest against immigrants, the police escort counter-protesters? Go figure. And this one from Gabby, who says, Mike, police take pro-immigrant protesters to an asylum hotel. I can't believe it. I'm scared and I worry about my children's safety. The police is there to serve and protect the British people, and their first duty of the government is to keep the British public safe. We need a general election now. I'll tell you what, people are hopping mad this morning, even more mad than they were last week when I told you all about how the government had been trying to keep it secret. They were smuggling in tens of thousands of Afghan refugees into this country without even anybody being told about it, without anybody's knowledge, trying to keep it secret. What on earth is going on? 24 minutes past 7.
They are trying to move these people on. They see themselves as a stepping stone to Britain. They understand the direction of travel, and they don't want these people hanging around in their countries any longer than they actually have to. The problem is we are the end destination, and that leaves you with a very awkward choice. Do you sit there and go, come on in, or do you begin the very expensive, potentially quite dangerous, but I'm afraid very necessary step of saying to people, you have no right to be in this country and we're going to send you home. But of course, this being Britain, we're avoiding taking that final step.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 27 minutes past 7. People very angry this morning, more so than I've seen them even since last week when we revealed, as I said, that Afghans were coming into this country by the tens of thousands, smuggled in by the government under cover of night in unmarked planes, you know, put into communities by the tens of thousands without anybody knowing about it. The government took out a super injunction. This was the last Tory government. When Labour got in, they continued the super injunction. They didn't tell anybody. More tens of thousands were brought in, smuggled in without being told, without the public being told about it. Absolutely extraordinary. We now learned today, according to the front page of the Daily Telegraph, if you've only just joined us, that the police have been facilitating counter demonstrations against those good people of Epping who are fed up to the back teeth of migrants living in a hotel, terrorising their community, committing crimes all over the place, and generally making things a lot worse for the good people of Epping. They're living in a hotel called the Bell Hotel. We understand that there was talk last night of it being shut down. We were told that there was some movement of migrants from the Bell Hotel hotel into the Britannia Hotel. We haven't had that confirmed, but certainly it's true that there were migrants being delivered to the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf in London last night. Lots of people getting very worked up about that. But the main problem for me this morning, and the main thing that's turning people absolutely to craziness, is the fact that the Essex police have admitted that they took pro-migrant protesters to an asylum hotel despite previously denying that they did it. Right? The force backtracked after it was shown footage of the protesters that you're looking at now being escorted by officers from a nearby station, from a nearby railway station, by the way, to the site of the hotel, and then being put back into police vans, which they were calling buses, so that they could be taken back after the demonstration to the station so they could get trains back to London. Assistant Chief Constable Stuart Hooper quoted as saying, "We have a reasonable duty to protect people who want to exercise their rights. In terms of bringing people to the hotel, the police have a duty to facilitate free assembly." No, they don't. They do not have a duty to do that at all. If anybody has ever been to a football match, you get out of the local station nearby and you walk to the stadium. You don't hop on a police bus and get told, "I'll tell you what, we'll take you to where the fighting's going on so that you can get a good punch-up going with your rival fans." Unbelievable. This from somebody who doesn't give a name. Which senior officer at Essex Police authorised the transportation of those far-left protesters? We, the public, pay their wages, get them out into the public and make them explain why they approved this. This is surely gross misconduct and deserves criminal charges to be levelled. I think you're right. Surely those in charge of Essex Police, says Chris, should be sacked for trying to incite trouble. I don't think anybody can argue with that. It's absolutely ridiculous. This one from Carmel in Aberdeenshire. Morning, Mike. I agree totally with your points about what is going on when those in positions of power and influence clearly despise our country, our way of life and our Union Jack flag. What is driving this? What is the agenda here? Who is benefiting from this and for what purpose? This is also with the story that's in the Sun today about a whole collection of young girls who wanted to, celebrate British culture on another one of these culture days, a bit like the story last week from rugby, where a young girl was told she couldn't appear at her school in a Union Jack dress. These people were wearing Union flags draped over their shoulders. Some of them were tied into a knot and made into a skirt. They were detained in a room and told that they could not take part in a British day of culture because they had a Union Jack flag. I'm not joking. This is not, an April Fool. Let's get a voice note from Judith.
Good morning, Mike. It's Judy from Altos, West Yorkshire. Great show as per usual. If the police have admitted shuttling pro-migrant protesters to the Bell Hotel, will the person who instructed them to do this be taken to task? Because it caused a lot of problems and riots, and it weren't the original people that were protesting that were doing all this damage. So, like I said, will anybody lose their job over this? I very much doubt it. I very much doubt Yvette Cooper and the Prime Minister are interested. Thank you.
Well, I haven't heard from Yvette Cooper, but I'd quite like to hear from the Home Secretary as to what she believes is the right thing to do for these Essex constabulary people. Unbelievable. Let's talk to Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Robert, unbelievable scenes this morning. We haven't quite managed to find out yet whether the Bell Hotel's been closed. We don't know whether those migrants have been moved into the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf. We suspect that might be what's happened. Don't know. But the idea that the police have somehow got themselves involved in shipping in far-left activists in order to demonstrate against the local people of Epping who are sick to the back teeth of having migrants wandering around and causing trouble is extraordinary, isn't it?
Morning, Mike. So those protesting outside the Bell Hotel are normal men and women of Essex, their fathers, mothers, just concerned about the change in the community that they have seen as a result of the dozens of undocumented men being dumped in their community. They are concerned about the welfare of their children after reports of alleged gropings and things like that. They have every right to be protesting against this imposition that the government, as a result of its failed asylum policy, has dumped on their doorstep. The idea that we're having snaggletooth, purple-haired freaks being transported in by the police under the cover of darkness to effectively give a counter-narrative and effectively just agitate those that have got very legitimate grievances is absolutely disgusting. I don't think I've ever seen a story quite like this one. I think this is something that effectively is looking to undermine the genuine concerns of real people and instead elevating those voices of sort of well-to-do Islington, middle-class, bored, slightly elderly individuals who want nothing more than to wave those placards that say fascists not welcome here and things like that, and to demonise the ordinary people of this country. I think it's an absolutely disgusting thing for Essex Police to have done. I really hope heads do roll as a result of this, but I really can't imagine that they will. I think we need to get to a point where we recognise that people across the country are such a fed up to the back teeth with this situation when it comes to illegal migrants that they are inevitably going to start protesting. And it's most of the situation in Essex was done so peacefully, and then the agitation was brought when individuals were shipped in from the railway station. So I really can't see how this is in any way legitimate or it's in any way done in the name of law and order. I think it's something that is effectively done for political reasons.
Absolutely right. I mean, here's what Keir Starmer tweeted out last night, right? Saying that he's smashing the gangs, he's doing this, he's doing that, he's going to follow the money. Have a look at this.
I'm absolutely determined that we're going to stop people crossing the channel in small boats. That is being run by gangs who are making a huge amount of money from the vile trade of people smuggling and getting them into those boats. And I was chief prosecutor for 5 years, and one of the things that I learned then was if you're going to smash a gang that's driven by money, follow the money.
Yeah, well, the other people who are making a bucket load of money out of it are people like Serco and other companies who have got government contracts to house these bozos every time they come across the channel. So the idea that he's going to somehow follow the money, you can follow it all the way to the Britannia Hotel, where you seem to be paying for an awful lot of rooms for these illegals to stay in.
Exactly. It's the Serco, it's the hoteliers, it's the suppliers, it's the charities, the left-wing charities that are given very lucrative contracts to do things such as provide welfare for those individuals in hotel. A lot of people are doing very well out of this chaos. And like, frankly, the problem isn't the gangs. I couldn't give a darn about the gangs themselves. The problem is the huge numbers of individuals across the world who are looking at Britain, looking at what successive governments have done and how incompetently they've handled the illegal migration crisis, and thinking that is well worth my risk. That is well worth me making an effort to try and enter that country illegally, because I know at the very worst I will have at least a couple of years effectively in a hotel, able to enter the black market through Deliveroos that are incompetently managed, or those car washes that are not clamped down on effectively, and I'll be sort of put up in taxpayer-funded hotels, free food and board, make a pretty bob for myself, and then eventually maybe the judicial system will creak its way into removing me from the country. The pull factors are the huge issue here. I think what we're seeing effectively is Keir Starmer, what over the last year has been bleating on about these gangs. How do we know how successful they've been? There's no KPI in place to measure the actual progress of this plan. Again, it's another set of headlines today with his plan to smash the gangs of prosecuting those.
Well, I mean, it's not worth the paper. None of his moves are worth the paper they're written on. They talk about arrests being up 50%. To my knowledge, they've arrested 2 people. They haven't arrested really very many people at all. The people continue to come. They keep commandeering more hotels. They're commandeering more individual homes for these people. And the threat of more people coming is not going away.
No, and we saw another piece in the Telegraph today saying that what we're likely to see is that the numbers double this year at the very least. I think we will hit 50,000 this year. I'd put money on 50,000. Result of weather conditions and just the existing diaspora that we have here in the UK. They will obviously be in touch with people back in their countries of origin as well, and those kind of benefits that they're being given will be being projected back to those people looking to make the crossing as well. So I think we will 100% hit 50,000. Of course, we'll see probably over 6 billion being spent on this ludicrous situation over the next 12 months. All the while, of course, we're seeing the government desperately scrabbling around to try and make a few savings to deal with the spiralling spending situation and the debt we have in this country as well. And again, it's the British taxpayer that is likely going to be walloped in the coming months with tax hikes. As a result of this, we're effectively in a situation where the British population being put last by their own politicians who prioritise things like international law and ridiculous notions of asylum and duty to individuals claiming refugee status, rather than they have towards the actual members of people of this country that have paid taxes for generations.
I know. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely ridiculous and shocking and shameful. Great to see you. Robert, thanks very much indeed. Robert Bates there, Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. Let's get a voice note from Paul.
Whoever made that decision to bus those protesters, Antifa, whatever they were, to that site should be sacked immediately for gross incompetence. Nothing will happen because the same people infect every damn county in the country. This is why policing is so dreadful. Great show. Good morning.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. This from Kenny in Edinburgh. And Mike, the migration crisis is solved. Angela Rayner vowing to tackle the effects of it makes me feel great. Not. More promises from a proven dishonest government means sweet FA. The government could stop this tomorrow, but they just don't want to. I wonder what their actions would be if they had to live in areas where these migrants were committing crime. Well, this is the thing. You know, they have no clue, do they? Absolutely extraordinary times in which we live. Coming up, Jamie Jenkins is going to join us, our favourite statistician, about just how bad Rachel Reeves is at the economy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. A couple of tweets for you. Our council taxes, says Tasmanian, pay for this crap. Not only is it disgusting, but insulting to the public. Paid agitators escorted by the police to create civil unrest within peaceful protesters. This is planned mayhem, and the police, government, civil service, local councils included, are all complicit. And Lewis says this, a point will come very soon when police must decide, are they going to remain the puppets of a failing government or support the people whom they serve? There are far more of us than the police, and when it is clear that they are no longer acting within the law, then that's the time that they are criminals. And that's the problem. If the police cease to be police, then people will cease to treat them as police, and they will see them as activists, and then they will be fair game. And that is when the problems really begin to start, right? The police are no longer law enforcement officers, they are now feelings enforcement officers, said David from Teesside. People are really reacting to this story because it is extraordinary. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, it's all real. Essex Police previously denied it. They've now admitted we took people deliberately into a place where they could demonstrate against local residents who are upset about migrants in a hotel in their neighbourhood, which they don't want. What the hell are the police doing? Let's talk to Jamie Jenkins, independent statistician, of course, a man that's got his finger on the pulse of just how bad things are in this country, particularly economically. Jamie, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. Slightly perturbed by what the police seem to be considering to be part of their job. But just before we talk about the state of the nation and how bad the economy actually is, let's have a look at Rachel Reeves. She was at the Lords Economic Affairs Committee yesterday. Here she is blaming productivity.
So there are sort of three things that affect, I guess, the productivity numbers. It's physical capital, labour supply, and that's the quality of the labour supply, so human capital as well as the numbers, and then total factor productivity, so technology.
It's like somebody sitting in a lecture, isn't it, who doesn't really understand economics, who's got a textbook in front of them. When they get asked the question by the professor, you know, what's going on with productivity? And you get that answer. It means nothing.
I know, Mike. I watched some of it. It was cringeworthy. There was a lot of, it was really for a chancellor. The confidence of the chancellor in that committee was awful, Mike.
Yeah.
Even Rishi Sunak. It wasn't great under him as a chancellor, but he spoke with confidence and seemed to know.
Well, she's got a head in her hands for half of it.
Yeah, and one of the things.
So is everybody else, to be fair.
Well, pretty much. She talked at the start. She was talking about the things that she's trying to do as Chancellor to try and boost confidence in the UK, and she talked about stability. And she claimed at the start of this session yesterday that the Bank of England have been cutting interest rates because of the stability of the economy that she's created, which is absolute nonsense. You need to look at the data, Mike. And the Bank of England have been cutting interest rates over the last year, but they pretty much follow what the Fed have done in the USA. If the Bank of England didn't cut interest rates, that would kind of strengthen the pound, but that would have an impact of hurting exports. We'd have more imports and it would hurt growth. Nothing to do with what she's doing, because if you talk about economic stability, one thing we can say is Reeves and Starmer promised growth in the country, Mike. Well, we have had some growth. We've had an increase in job losses. We've had an increase in debt. We've had an increase in inflation and an increase in small boat migrants. But I don't think that's the growth that the public were hoping for.
No, exactly right. And this is what I was saying this morning, that with the kind of the spreading problem of sort of unrest, shall we say, from Epping to Diss in Norfolk last night down at the Britannia Hotel outside Canary Wharf. That is going to spread. People are going to get more and more agitated, more and more worked up about these migrants being put into communities where nobody was asked if they wanted it. And people aren't going to want to pay their taxes for this, right? When she comes to them in the autumn and says, we're going to have to start putting taxes up because, we've got a £22 billion black hole. Well, I can tell you exactly where the black hole is. It's over there in that hotel. And get rid of all those men and kick them all out of the country. And then suddenly we won't have a black hole anymore.
And these migrant hotels, Mike, they're not adding any economic growth to the economy. So we've seen 2 months of a decline. We've seen 5 months of job losses. Now, in June, with the figures yesterday, we saw borrowing at 20.7 billion. Now, Mike, a huge amount of... And she talked yesterday at this committee as well about debt to GDP ratio, and that's going up. And we're at levels, Mike, that you would normally see in wartime, but we're in peacetime, and we're seeing a huge level of debt. You were talking earlier with Theo about the tax burden as well. Now, that's going up to the percentage of tax of GDP. The one way of getting that down, Mike, is to increase the economy. Now, if you've got tax going up and the government spending money on asylum hotels or giving in public sector pay increases, that doesn't stimulate the economy. I've done economics, Mike. I've done, as part of my maths degree back in the day in my A-levels, economics, where, you give money to people, they will spend that money and that will generate economic growth. Right. Taking more tax and then spending it on the Chagos Islands or spending it on migrant hotels or public sector pay increases is not going to stimulate the economy. That's why debt as a percentage of GDP is going up, and that's why tax as a percentage of GDP is going up. It's purely economic 101, Mike, that she clearly needs to go back to school and maybe have a year or maybe spend the summer at an economics camp, come back, and she might go a different path.
Well, let's try it. Let's have a look at another clip of her. This is her being really, really awkward when she was asked another question.
At the same time, we also have a challenging economic inheritance with high levels of tax as a share of GDP, historic high levels of government debt, and then also economic growth that really for the last 15 years has been very poor by historical standards because of the weak productivity growth that we've experienced in that period of time.
Well, if productivity is weak, why don't you encourage it as opposed to putting more taxes on companies, which kind of, strangles it? That's part of the problem. But if you want to know what is also part of the problem here, Jamie, have a look at this. This is Ed Miliband talking about Sizewell C yesterday.
16 years ago, this guy, Speaker, new nuclear is right for energy security. Yeah, that's me. Identified Sizewell as a site for new nuclear power. Now we're making it happen. 10,000 new jobs, 1,500 apprenticeships, 6 million homes powered. Cheaper, clean, homegrown energy. That's what we mean by our clean energy mission for Britain.
Yeah, well, the problem is it's going to cost another 38 billion, which the government is going to have to stump up because they can't find anybody else to put any money in, which is all our money, right? 10,000 jobs, he says they're going to create. Well, they're not going to create them in the local area, are they? Because if they had 10,000 people that knew how to run a nuclear plant, presumably they would have employed them before now.
Oh, no, totally, Mike. And, you know, they talk about the Reform government. I think Nigel Farage has been talking about what he would do with his spending, and then the Tories and Labour Party come out criticising it. But in terms of the funding, but these politicians, Mike, seem to pluck money for net zero out of thin air. Now, the nuclear deal is not a bad one, actually, when you think about it in terms of generating electricity. Let's talk about the cost could be a bit expensive, but, you know, let's talk about the billions that he's throwing at solar panels and wind. And I was looking, actually, I was scouring the government website yesterday. I'm always remarkable, Mike. I don't think many people have talked about this. When back in June, the numbers came out that in the first quarter of this year, the amount of electricity generated from wind was down on the year earlier, even though the number of wind farms have gone up. And do you know what the government report cited itself? It was a lack of wind, Mike. So if we continue spending billions and billions on more and more wind farms, you know, it get to a point where there's no gas left. There'll come to a point where there's no lights on because the wind would have not been blowing. There's no kind of sun in the evening. And this is the madness of Ed Miliband putting billions and billions. Let's get money back into people's pockets. Let's get them spending on the high street. That will generate the growth, not the government deciding what they want to do with our money.
No, I know. Absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. Jamie, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for putting it all in perspective for us. Let's get a voice note from Sean on busing protesters.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. The reason the police give escorts to the communists and bring them up to the peaceful protesters is because the police know that when they bring these people, it's going to kick off. And the first word out of everyone's mouth straight away is bigots and far right, and then that way it's easier to call everybody bigots than actually do anything, isn't it? You know, it same happened in Hull last year, just before the riots. There was a nice protest, everyone was peaceful, and then the police escorted all the communists over, and within minutes it erupted. And they do it on purpose. I mean, it's absolutely shocking, this. Our police cannot be trusted. None of our institutions can be trusted, Mike.
I know, it's absolutely shocking. Dreadful state of affairs. It's 10 minutes to 8, believe it or not. We've already done nearly 2 hours of the show. A couple of things that we haven't mentioned yet. This from Janice. Big protest in Ukraine against their corrupt leader Zelensky. The MSM aren't covering it. Well, funnily enough, there's a piece in the Telegraph front page. Vladimir Zelensky faced public protest last night after Parliament backed a controversial bill limiting the power of anti-corruption agencies. I don't know whether old two-tier Keir's got an answer for that one. Usually he's seen hugging Vladimir Zelensky on the steps of Downing Street. Well, apparently there's an awful lot of people in Ukraine now who think that Zelensky might be actually a bit corrupt. Demonstrations have spread from Kiev to Lviv and Dnipro, the first public protests against the Ukrainian president since the Russian invasion in February 2022. So we want to keep an eye on that. We report everything here at Talk, so don't forget about that. Coming up next, we're going to speak to Jake Wallace-Simons, who is, of course, a columnist at the Telegraph. He says David Lammy is unfit to be Britain's Foreign Secretary. I couldn't agree more. This is Talk.
as a percentage of those who commit acquisitive crime like shoplifting, those who commit it purely for fun because they don't want to pay for stuff they could afford, is actually a relatively small number. 80 to 90% of acquisitive crime, as I say, is committed by people in desperate straits of one kind or another. And some of those desperate straits, if not most of them, are not their fault. So let's look at treating mental illness and addiction in a grown-up and responsible way and not just demonise people and lock them up at vast expense. I don't want to pay 50 grand a year to keep shoplifters in prison.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Coming up to 7:54. We're going to speak now to Jake Wallace-Simons, columnist at The Telegraph. This from Veritas, who says the British police are now a tool of the left-wing establishment to attack, intimidate and smear the British people. We see it with the Met Police in London, where every weekend they offer protection to violent anti-Semitic thugs and arrest and intimidate anyone that disagrees. They've even done that to counter protesters against the Palestinian thugs. But, you know, what do I know about policing? I just thought they were supposed to be neutral. Before we talk to Jake, let's just have a listen to what David Lammy had to say yesterday, speaking of Good Morning Britain.
Now we see the grotesque spectacle of kids holding out their hand for food and being shot and killed as they wait. And of course, it offends all possible public consciousness in our own country, but why we saw so many countries come together and sign that statement, I think now up to 28, is because it offends the global community.
Yeah, well, the global community is being taken for a very long ride by the Hamas propaganda machine, it seems to me. Jake Wallace-Simons, one of the few people that's pointed this out. Jake, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I find it extraordinary that Lammy, this government and so many others are being hoodwinked every single day by lies which are coming out of Gaza, perpetrated by a terrorist organisation.
It is totally mind-blowing, but I think in David Lammy's particular case, it's not a huge surprise given his track record. He's not the brightest foreign secretary we've ever had. No. There was his cock-up on Celebrity Mastermind in 2009. There was 2013 when he tweeted that the black and white smoke coming out from the Sistine Chapel for choosing the Pope was a racial issue. Right. So he's not the sharpest tool in the box. But look, I mean, it's a different matter when he's in charge of our foreign policy. Yeah. When you've got Hamas, a jihadi group, I don't need to go through the atrocities of October the 7th. Viewers and listeners know what Hamas is. They clearly have been using their own civilians as pawns in an attempt to destroy the Jews and the Jewish state. And the media is complicit in this. And now the government, the Foreign Office, is complicit in this by bringing more pressure to Israel, to bear on Israel to stop the war and withdraw than on Hamas. I mean, David Lammy never uses that sort of language against Hamas, only against Israel. And look, if Israel were to give up tomorrow, pull out, leave the hostages there, leave Hamas in power, what next? There'd be another war, another atrocity within a year or two.
Well, everybody says it, and they're watching it, and as it's happening in Syria as well, where Druze families are being butchered and murdered before our very eyes on social media. Lammy doesn't have much to say about that. He just gave the leader of Syria 90 million quid. And yet he doesn't talk about the genocide that's going on there. Meanwhile, people like David Collier, a very well-respected journalist, writes about what is actually going on at these aid points in Gaza. And what is going on is that Hamas are trying to control them because they know that if they don't have control of the aid, they haven't really got control of anything.
Yeah, I mean, Hamas would have you believe that Israel goes to the trouble of setting up aid distribution networks, pumping in all the aid, and then when people come to claim the aid, massacring them. Yeah. I mean, there wouldn't be much point in doing that. I mean, the Jews are not particularly stupid. They wouldn't do that and blacken their international reputation in the process. No. And yet, David Lammy's taken in by this. That you saw that quote just earlier where he said that, children are handing out their hand for aid and then getting shot. That's exactly what Hamas wants the world to believe.
But he shouldn't be able to spout this kind of rubbish because he wasn't challenged. I mean, if he ever came on this show, which he never does, I would say, yeah, but you don't actually know that that's true. You're literally taking the word of terrorists, people who would literally cut your head off if you went to Gaza to argue with them, you know? And it's been very well explained, as I say, by David Collier, where what happens is, you know, there are firefights between members of Hamas and the IDF. The IDF shoot the members of Hamas, and then they get carried by other members of Hamas into the food distribution area to make it look as if that's where they were shot. But that's in fact not where they were shot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole thing is a con, and the thing is that Hamas knows that we know what they're doing, and it also knows that we don't care, and we're going to report it anyway. I mean, you mentioned the genocide of the Druze in Syria. I mean, that's just a couple of miles over the border from Israel, and yet the interest of the West stops at the border of Israel and doesn't go. I mean, if Israel was doing the kind of atrocities that the jihadis are doing to the Druze north of the border, the world would be up in arms. I mean, it's up in arms already. The whole thing is a lie, and it's playing into the hands of Hamas. It's really quite depraved, to be honest.
Yeah, it really is awful. Well, keep up the good work, Jake, because there's not many of us doing it, but we're trying hard. Jake Wallace-Simons there, columnist at Daily Telegraph. Thank you very much indeed. This from Rob in Lancashire. Whatever happened to acting without fear or favour? The police are losing in respect of the people, and without that, the future is anarchy. Can you just imagine Keir Starmer getting up on his hind legs later on and talking about, you know, punishing people to the full extent of the law? Well, the full extent of the law does not, I'm afraid, reach into Essex Police and allow them to actually escort people, as you're seeing now, onto police buses so they can take them to a demonstration and then take them back to a railway station so they can make their way home. Unbelievable. Sean in Norfolk says, right, it's the final straw for me. I have no respect for any authority in this country. They don't care for us British people. It feels that they're putting criminals first. Absolutely right. People are getting very worked up about this. I want to know when somebody from the Essex Police Force is going to resign, because this is a resigning issue. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We've got loads more coming up in the next hour. Sunil Sharma's going to join us, Ryan Sabey from The Sun, Dr. Lawrence Buckman as well on the junior doctors. They're all going out on strike as of Friday. Great, isn't it? Fantastic. Welcome to Britain 2025. We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed. Very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the. Is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour
across the UK. on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8, I'm Mike Graham, and of course we are here for the duration until 10 o'clock. Alex Phillips in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. This morning we've got two big stories to tell you about. Obviously the first is Ozzy Osbourne, who died sadly yesterday, 2 weeks after his last ever concert at Villa Park in Birmingham. He was surrounded by loved ones, according to the front page of the Daily Mail. Front page of the Sun, the wonderful Wizard of Ozzy. It says rock legend Ozzy Osbourne died yesterday, aged 76, just 17 days after his farewell concert with Black Sabbath. They're calling him a national treasure. The self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness passed away surrounded by his loving family, including, of course, his loving wife Sharon, who worked here for so many months, almost a couple of years actually, over the whole thing, working here at talkTV. And we pass our condolences on to her and to the entire family, because he wasn't only a rock god, he wasn't only a great British eccentric, he was, of course, the first real star of what became known as reality TV, when the Osbournes was the first show that was started up, I think, by MTV, and became a massive hit as the cameras just followed him and his wife and his kids around the house with the dog. That, of course, kept making a mess everywhere, much to his chagrin. But the big story as well that we're talking about is on the front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning, which basically says the police in Essex have admitted that they took pro-migrant protesters to the Asylum Hotel in Epping, where there have been demonstrations going on since last week. We saw, of course, many arrests being made because of the trouble that was caused, and it now turns out that the police were complicit in bringing that trouble to the people, the residents of Epping, who were peacefully demonstrating outside the Bell Hotel because they hated the fact that it was right next to a secondary school. They hated the fact that it was full of men, young fighting-age men, migrants who were causing trouble around the area of the town, and also one of them who was arrested and charged with committing a sexual assault. He has since appeared in court in Chelmsford and denied that particular charge. But Assistant Chief Constable Stuart Hooper quoted as saying, "We have a reasonable duty to protect people who want to exercise their rights. In terms of bringing people to the hotel, the police have a duty to facilitate free assembly." We'll be talking about that throughout the course of the show this morning. There's also talk that the members or the migrants in that hotel in Epping have been moved into a hotel in Canary Wharf, to wit the Britannia Hotel, where there was also some demonstrations outside last night. No confirmation yet from the hotel, but Tower Hamlets Council have confirmed that the government has moved certain migrants into that hotel. They're saying that it's important the government ensures that there is a full package of support for those staying at the hotel. Well, what about a full package of support for those of us paying our council tax into London to Sadiq Khan, only to have it spent on a load of migrants who would rather like being put up in a £400 a night hotel? Thanks very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. The doctor strike is still on. Rachel Reeves is still a useless Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's all kicking off this morning, and loads of you want to talk to me, and we will talk to all of you. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. This from Barry, who says, "Morning, Mike. By the Essex Police action, surely this is encouraging incitement to riot and is an offence." And Harvey in Burnley says, "Good morning, Mike. Regarding the police aligning themselves with politically left groups, they are clearly not being impartial. They are now collaborators." And that's where the problem begins, because if people start to see the police as no longer neutral, as no longer part of what they might call the good side of the law, they're going to start treating them very, very differently. Mike in Colchester says, "Not only are the migrant hotels hoovering up our taxes, but what is the impact on the local economies of the hotels not being available to tourists and those travelling for business? This must also have a negative effect on the local economy, stifling any growth, let alone the impact of increased shoplifting and other crimes." Absolutely right. It is extraordinary, isn't it? Let's talk to Sunil Sharma, political commentator, host of the Rational Voices with Sunil podcast. Sunil, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
There's not many rational voices out there at the moment, and even the Essex Police appear to have lost the plot. You know, incredible story on the front of the Telegraph that they've now admitted that they lied, first of all, about it, but they've now admitted, because they've seen footage, which is undeniable, that they were actually bussing people in from a nearby railway station into Epping so that they could counter-demonstrate against local residents who were demonstrating perfectly peacefully.
I mean, if there's any doubt that the police are not politically motivated. I think that's gone out the window here. There is clear political motivation from the police, and you could probably argue for more institutions than just the police. But this is, I think, one of the people who wrote into you said it perfectly. You could argue they're inciting violence by bringing people to another group of protesters who believe in something differently. If these more left-leaning protesters feel so passionate about this case, then they can turn up there by themselves. They can facilitate it themselves, just like everyone else who's been protesting before has. So the idea that the police are actually getting involved in this, their job should just be to stop if there's any violent acts. That's it, full stop. I don't think it almost seems as if they want problems to arise by bringing these two groups together and then basically blaming the group people who are worried about the fact that there's migrants next to a secondary school, that they can blame everything on them. It almost seems as if they want these two groups to fight and then say, yep, look at these far right people, look at these people who are just unhelpful, they're trying to cause problems, and I think that's what they're trying to do. It makes no other sense of why else they would actually bring protesters.
Well, people are asking me this morning now, sending me all sorts of messages and tweets off the scale, asking if this is what the police have admitted to doing in Essex, what do they not admit to doing anywhere else? Because, you know, I don't think I've ever seen a case where this has been more blatantly, corrupt and anti the law itself. But, you know, what else are the police doing which is corrupt and against the law?
Definitely, and you know, the problem is, how will people now respond to this? Normal citizens, when they now speak to the police, it's naturally there's going to start to change their opinions of the police. Naturally, they may become a bit more less respect towards the police. They may not want to listen to the police as much, because if they know that the police are politically motivated, and the fact that they're even defending these actions really, really sums it up in terms of how politically motivated they've become. And it's really, really scary, and I can understand, you know, the frustrations from many people. If this was the other way around, would police be bringing those people who are unhappy with the migrants in the hotel? Would they be facilitating? There's absolutely no chance they would. Were they facilitating people during BLM who are anti-BLM to the protests in London? No. Then clearly there is one side in which they have motivations for. It's now out in the open, and I think if Sir Keir Starmer has any sort of brain cells or has any sort of care for the UK, the first thing you do is condemn this, regardless of if he agrees or disagrees, because you cannot have the police or any law enforcement in this country being politically motivated like the way they are currently.
Yeah, it is extraordinary what's going on, because we now see as well that there is a growing kind of disquiet in the country. You know, it doesn't just start in Epping and end in Epping, it starts in Epping and it spreads. You know, we've got people demonstrating in Diss now in Norfolk, because we had a caller, funnily enough, on Monday who alerted us to it and said, you know, there's an asylum seeker hotel which has now been taken over because it used to house women and children who were migrants trying to make a life in this country. They've all been moved out, and it's now full of young men. And similarly, last night, the Hotel the Britannia in Canary Wharf looked as though that was certainly going to be targeted by the Home Office. And we're not sure if those migrants have been moved from Epping, but certainly they have now commandeered the Britannia Hotel, which is not cheap, and lots of people there last night wondering what it's all about and where it's all going to end.
Well, I think the thing is, and this is what makes the police story even more and more frustrating, is if you are a British person who has issue with the crazy net migration numbers in the UK, if you have an issue with the NHS waiting list, if you have an issue with your kids going to schools with huge numbers in each classroom, and you want to protest against this peacefully in the UK, what it seems like people are going to do, just like what Sir Keir Starmer did last year, is going to brand those people as far right, racist, bigots, and all that sort of stuff. And I think what the police did yesterday was an example of trying to incite that violence, just so that they can justify what these people are. It's perfectly normal for people in the UK and to be frustrated with what's going on in terms of the migration numbers. This is out of control, and until something happens, I think there's a serious risk of what happened last summer happening again. And
well, I mean, even the government are now starting to acknowledge that. Angela Rayner quoted on the front page of the Times today saying that immigration is having a profound impact on society. She's warning ministers in cabinet that they need to acknowledge real concerns about rapid change to diffuse community tensions. I mean, she's meant to be the Minister for Communities, so she should be the one diffusing tensions. And we spoke yesterday to one of the mothers down in Epping, and I said, if you had a message for Keir Starmer, what would it be? And she said, come and see us, come down with Yvette Cooper, talk to the people in Epping, understand why we are frustrated, understand why we are fearful, understand why we're angry, understand why you can't put migrants, young men, in a hotel next to a secondary school, understand why we're upset because a teenage girl was assaulted, and a man has now been charged with that assault. Go and see them, but they don't seem to have a clue that that's what they need to do.
100%. They don't seem interested in those people. They don't fit their little Westminster London bubble, so they're just not interested in looking at the average working class, average person in the UK. I just don't think they care. They're so out of wits with what actually happens to the average Brit in this country, and I think they'd prefer to ignore it. But I think unless they actually seriously make a big effort to understand the people's concerns, and there is a real risk of what happened in summer happening again. And I think, of course, we don't want to see violence in the streets. No one wants to see chaos like that. But there are a lot of people in this country whose voices have not been heard. Since what's happened in Brexit, one of the main reasons people voted for Brexit was a control in immigration. Not the only reason, but a big reason. And that's just not happened. And I think that's a serious, serious concern. And people they feel it every single day in the UK. And I think maybe they don't feel it and they don't understand it, but the average Brit 100% feels it. And now there's actually threats in terms of security and safety for people in many places in the UK. It should be really, really alarming to anyone with a brink of common sense. But instead, I think my concern and worry is, like probably a lot of Brits, is they will brand people who are talking like this as far right. They'll try and stifle this sort of conversation from happening. And I think what the police did yesterday was an example of that, where they almost wanted, or it feels like they want some violence to kick off so they could label it straight off the bat. And I think that is where I think the real big concerns come.
And meanwhile, the problem is for Keir Starmer that he doesn't appear to not only know what to do about it, he puts out, these ridiculous tweets all the time. This is one he put out last night, sort of justifying all of his foreign diplomacy. Check this out.
I'm absolutely determined that we're going to stop people crossing the channel in small boats. That is being run by gangs who are making a huge amount of money from the vile trade of people smuggling and getting them into those boats. One other example I'll give you, which is very important to me, is the deal I was able to do with President Trump, the trade deal, had a direct impact on JLR. I went up to Solihull to JLR. They sell into the North American market. Fantastic. Jaguar Land Rover, iconic British firm and business. But they were under real threat with the tariffs. By reducing the tariffs, because of the agreement we made, 44,000 jobs are more secure now than they would otherwise have been. That's all the jobs in the supply market. So whether it's the deal this afternoon, which is small modular reactors, whether it's the returns agreement last week with the French, or the deal with the US, each of them translates directly into something that matters.
No, actually it doesn't. Jaguar Land Rover just fired 500 managers, right? Because their car company is going down the gurgler, partly because it's been badly managed and ridiculously become woke, right? The deal with the French, the one in, one out supposedly deal, is nothing like one in, one out, and it's not going to work. It's going to result in more people coming to this country than the ones who are going to leave it, right? And he's got this afternoon, he's got Narendra Modi arriving for another state visit from India. As far as I'm under the impression of, the trade deal we've done with India is going to allow Indian workers to come and work in Britain for sort of preferential tax rates and preferential national insurance rates for Indian companies who want to employ them here.
I think the profiles of Narendra Modi, Donald Trump, these guys, they eat Keir Starmer up in terms of he does not have any of their talents, charisma, whatever you want. But I think the big thing he could take from Narendra Modi when he visits him today is how India first he is, and how a lot of these, even Trump, America first, how much they actually take the interests of their people first. Yes. They their interests first. I think that would be the best takeaway Sir Keir Starmer could have. If I was him, or if any of his people around him, is to say, how are you so deeply popular with your people, or how are you doing these deals for your country? Because at least these leaders, they put their country first. This man does not put the country first. I don't know who he puts first, but he definitely does not put the average Brit first. And I think that is the biggest problems. And the idea that he has any sort of say on international matters, the idea that he is this sort of, this foreign diplomat who has the capacity to do deals with other foreign leaders is laughable. He can't control his own country. He doesn't understand the average Brit's concern. So what on earth he talks about these international leaders with, I have no idea. I think they probably take advantage of him.
Oh, they do. Totally. Yeah. He wouldn't know. He wouldn't know how to negotiate if he fell over a negotiator. Good to talk to you, Sunil. Thanks very much indeed. Sunil Sharma, the host of the Rational Voices with Sunil podcast. Let's talk to Rick, who's in Birmingham. Wants to talk about the Essex Police. Rick, very good morning to you, sir.
Yeah, morning, Mike. First time I've spoken to you. I have sent various WhatsApp voice notes to Kevin before and stuff. And I spoke to Jeremy Cole just once on the phone. I've got up this morning listening to your show in bed on the speaker. I'm just absolutely, my blood's boiling.
Yeah.
The police bringing in these counter-protesters, they should be arrested themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't think it's been initiated by them. I think it's come from the top. I think the government have sent them in to do this.
Right. Well, it's an incredible decision. I can't understand why, one, they would do it, then deny doing it, and then admit doing it. The whole operation is run by clowns, isn't it?
Well, surely to God, they know. Do they think we're stupid? We see what's going on in front of us.
Yeah.
We see the taxi service bringing in these boats, and we know where they're going to. I'm going to tell you something now. I've got a Facebook group, a community group. I live on the biggest housing estate in Europe.
Okay.
Right? We've got a migrant hotel outside our doorstep.
Right.
And it's been taking in migrants for 5 years. And if you go on their website, Google Maps actually, and there's reviews on there, and all the people who are complaining about it, the response from the management is it's shut for refurbishment and it's been shut for 5 years. And we see these people coming out of there onto our housing estate. There's people eating and drinking at a pub next door to it, being people coming into the pub and getting free meals.
Free meals?
Free meals with vouchers.
Wow. That's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. And presumably they're not all the same people that have been there for 5 years. They keep rotating them, right?
There's a bus stop outside the hotel. They've got all brand new trainers and nice coats and jackets and whatever.
Yeah.
I drive past it every day. I work for myself and I see it myself.
Yeah. That's shocking, isn't it? And it's going on all over the country. Rick, I really appreciate your call. Thanks for calling, and please do it again. Rick saying there that, everybody in the country knows what's going on. There's a, migrant hotel in the biggest housing estate in Europe, he says, in Birmingham. And basically, everybody knows who's there, everybody knows why it's there, and yet there's lies being told by the people that run the hotel. Oh, yeah, closed for refurbishment. No, it isn't. It's not closed for refurbishment. It's closed because it's full of migrants who are apparently getting free meals at the local pub. It's incredible, isn't it? What on earth has this country become? Let's get a voice note from Carl.
As per usual. Yeah, I nipped outside this morning to wait for a bus into town. It's a bit cloudy in Manchester, so I thought I'd get a bus. And 3 police vans went by, not one of them stopped. I was disgusted. I might make a complaint. I had to wait for a normal bus and do what the rest of us up north have to do. Make your own way into town and get home on your own. Great show, bye.
I wouldn't take a bus in Manchester if I were you. They've got a tendency to get their tops ripped off on going under a bridge without actually realising it. There's apparently not 1, but 2 buses have now been caught under the same bridge, believe it or not. Carl, thank you very much for that. James in Yorkshire says this. Now, let me see if I understand this correctly. The police have loaded and transported pro-immigration protesters wearing masks into police vehicles. What the hell is going on? And Simon says, morning, Mike. Regarding the migrants being housed at Canary Wharf, what about the security concerns around theft, stealing expensive watches and handbags, etc., given the affluent workers within that quarter? Also, what about the potential terror threat from accommodating unknowns so close to the financial district? Truly shocking. Simon from the Peaks. I mean, this is absolutely peak nonsense, isn't it? So you've got Essex Police actually helping people to go and cause trouble in a local town in Essex, right, against ordinary working people, as Keir Starmer would call them, who are upset at the fact that there's a migrant hotel housing at least one migrant who has been accused of committing a sexual offence. Who knows what the others are going to be accused of, but the locals say that there's been a crime wave ever since they opened this hotel up to migrants, the Bell Hotel. Now we believe they may have been moved to Canary Wharf. Now people are up in arms about that. You can't keep going like this. The government have admitted this morning that they think there might be riots in the summer. You think? Really? 8:22.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I would have had a much warmer welcome if I'd gone that way. The border authorities were absolutely... This
was where? Coming into...
This is coming into Britain itself.
What, at Dover?
This was on the French side.
Oh, the French side.
And
okay.
They were incredibly paranoid and of what I was potentially up to and what I was doing. They asked us about 1 billion questions. They then took us into the shed to have our cars searched. Our passports were taken. We then had to answer a whole other level of questions.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 8. We were just talking about that bus that crashed into a bridge over in Manchester. There's another bus that's crashed into another bridge this morning. It's a slightly different bridge, but nevertheless the same thing. And just on the subject of talking about all of the, the madness that's going on, I was in Mount Street yesterday, which is a part of Mayfair, which is fairly expensive, which is now completely and utterly taken over by people from the Middle East, I got no problem with it particularly, but there was a car there, a black Lamborghini Urus, which I walked past, and it had a weird sort of name on the back of it, Mansouri, so I thought I'd look it up. Mansouri is one of these companies that sort of do special upgrades to cars like Lamborghinis and make them kind of, more worthwhile. And I looked up how much it would cost. It's got Saudi plates on it, right? And the Saudi plate is 666 BEL. I'm not saying that for any particular reason, but it just struck my interest. And the Mansouri version of this car is worth, wait for it, 2 million quid. 2 million pounds. It was parked on the street. And the guy that got out of it looked like he was worth about tuppence halfpenny. But just incredible. And what's happening to London, just you look, everywhere you look, if you walk down Oxford Street, you might as well, you'd think you were in Dubai or Jeddah or somewhere. It's quite extraordinary. Morning, Mike. I'm just wondering who instigated the initial conversation between Essex police and left-wing protesters in Epping, says Jeff in Thurrock. How does that conversation even start? Yeah, I don't know. Can you imagine? I mean, does somebody ring up from Hope Not Hate and go, hello, is that Essex police? There's a bunch of us coming on a train. Do you think you could pick us up and take us to the demo? What demo is that? The one we're going to start? I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Let's talk to Ryan Saby, who is Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. He's got a big piece in the paper today about Rachel Reeves and how she's trashed the economy. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm thinking, just before we start talking about Rachel Reeves, we should tip our hats to Ozzy Osbourne, a great front page today, the wonderful Wizard of Ozzy. Ozzy Osbourne, I don't know if you were a Black Sabbath fan. Not everybody was, but 100 million records sold. And a true sort of British icon. A lot of people said to me this morning, I'm surprised he actually lasted as long as he did, given some of the things that happened to him. But he was also the first kind of reality TV star, wasn't he?
Yeah, massive character. My condolences to the family. There's a great piece in the paper today by Simon Cousins, who interviewed Ozzy Osbourne, did one of the last big interviews with Ozzy just at the end of last year, which is definitely worth reading. But I go back, probably going back 20 years or so, aren't we, for that TV show with the Osbournes, where we saw everything about their lives, and they invited the cameras, and it was one of those sort of very early reality TV shows. But they were big stars. They weren't social influencers or anything like that. This was them just getting on with their daily lives, and there's packed full of stuff on Ozzy Osbourne today.
And I was lucky enough to get to know Sharon quite well during the time that she was working at talkTV, because we used to work together on a couple of shows, and she was fantastically funny, really irreverent, just hilariously indiscreet. She knew stories about people that I could never repeat because they'd probably be libelous, but I mean they were all true, because she knew everyone, from sort of Elton John down to the royal family. She knew all the Hollywood superstars. Johnny Depp was a mate of hers. I remember when Johnny Depp came to play guitar with Jeff Beck a couple of years ago, in the midst of the whole kind of Amber Heard case, she went down to see them in their dressing room. She was brilliant.
Yeah, no, thing that stands out with me with Sharon Osbourne is when she was on the judges on X Factor, I think it was, very to the point. Her brutal comments to some of the contestants, but she was honest with them, and she was honest with she is honest with the viewers. So my thoughts with her this morning as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great front page and great coverage. Let's talk about your piece on page 10. Rachel Reeves, if she was heading into the summer break with a huge headache, things just got a whole lot worse, is what your intro says. There's talk of, and you give her a kind of marks out of 5 on all of the things that she's got to look at in terms of how she might try and get some money back. But I mean, she appeared in front of the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee yesterday and didn't look like somebody who knew what she was going to do.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a very, very difficult summer. I think the Chancellor, along with her advisors, will be weighing up all those options before the autumn budget. And as what she herself said the other week, that the low-hanging fruit, those sort of easy pickings that when she came into office to try and raise some money, whether it was the national insurance hike on business, there's only so many times you can go back to the well on that, because confidence in the business community has been hit by that. So it'll be interesting to see where she goes. Now, many people do expect on income tax for those thresholds to be frozen as well. But the problem with that, it may not seem like money being put on income tax, a penny or two income tax. But what happens is more and more people get dragged into paying those higher bands of tax. So it may not seem like a tax rise today, but later down the line, as more people having to pay it, there may be a raid on pensions as well. So what she's got to try and do is just try and find ways to raise cash, because the trouble is when we get to that autumn budget, it may well be the case that the independent watchdog, the forecast who sort of maps out how much money she's got available, and then sort of marks her homework, may downgrade, will probably downgrade the UK growth forecast. So that's going to play into that as well. And don't forget as well, the big debt problems in this country is going to basically cost about £110 billion just to sort of service that debt this year, which is more than what we pay on the education budget. It's costing us a lot of money. So lots for the Chancellor to think about this summer. If and when she gets a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at what she said to the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee, very awkwardly, I'd have to say.
At the same time, we also have a challenging economic inheritance with high levels of tax as a share of GDP, historic high levels of government debt, and then also economic growth that really for the last 15 years has been very poor by historical standards because of the weak productivity growth that we've experienced in that period of time.
I mean, she doesn't look for all the world like somebody who knows what she's doing or feels confident about what she's about to do or even understands the damage that she's even done to the economy. She still seems to be in denial that it's all the fault of somebody else.
Yeah, there's some of those big decisions that she made early on, and I think one of the problems is that they've gone down several roads to make either retreats, U-turns. We can go back to winter fuel, which was, there was a lot of controversy over that, over the winter fuel payments for the elderly. There's a partial retreat over that. And she's got to make the sums add up. I think one of the interesting things that she did say, and this points back to where this government, this country has had problems for many, many years, is productivity. Productivity and investment in productivity has been really, really low. And that needs to be moved around. And I think most governments recognise that productivity has gone down. But it's actually going to take this government, with lots of investment in human capital, research, all this kind of thing, just to try and get things moving, to try and make us a little bit more productive. And she said that she's not going to cut those research sort of budgets because that will be short-sighted. But she's got, there are big problems ahead, and there's economists are saying that she may have to find around 20 or 30 billion pounds just to fill that black hole. Right. So it's going to be tough.
Well, it is, because, I mean, the problem is that the problem with left-wing governments is that they cannot generate growth and productivity simply by putting public money into things. What they have to do is they have to release the kind of the private sector in order to encourage investment in that. So that if they put taxes down and they drop national insurance as opposed to putting them all up and making it go the other way, there might be some confidence in the markets. But there isn't any right now. And in the leader column, it says here, borrowing costs are the highest in this country now since 1998. More borrowed in June at any time since records began, except during COVID. Everybody's now saying, we're going to talk to Liam Halligan, I think, later on in this hour from the Telegraph. Every economist is now saying that we are perilously close to where we were back in the 1970s, where we had to go cap in hand to the IMF to borrow more money.
Yeah, I mean, there was an incredible quote from the Chancellor when effectively she was saying that Britain is relying on the kindness of strangers just to buy our government bonds, which I think is not a great place for Great Britain to be in, just to sort of rely on people just to buy our debt. But I think one thing, you talk about business confidence there, Mike, I just wonder whether when we get to the budget, whether Rachel Reeves has to send a signal to the business community. I know she raised national insurance. Does she send a signal that she'd like to bring it down in 3 years? Is there a signal that she'd like to bring corporation tax down by the end of the Parliament? So I think there are signals that she has to get across just to say that she's on the side of business. Don't forget, we've got that workers' right package coming up, and that's going to be rolled out over the next 2 years.
That's not going to be very helpful either, is it?
It's going to be really, really tough for business. We've had a lot of backlash from business on that. So I think as well as trying to fill that black hole, which could be up to £30 billion, I think she also needs to send a signal that she's partially on the side of business.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help when Keir Starmer keeps deluding himself and everybody else by saying, business confidence is at a 9-year high, which it isn't. Simply absolutely untrue. This is a great column. Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Ryan Saby with the big page 10 today. Labour has wrecked the economy. Here's how you might be made to pay. Well, I think the people of this country are not willing to pay for her wrecking of the economy, particularly since most of the money that seems to be going out of the exchequer.
Morning, mate. Stephen Cumbria here.
Oh, sorry, Stephen Cumbria. I wasn't expecting that. We'll come back to that in a moment. Let's see what's being said on the Sun Letters page. And I think people are saying the things that we've been saying here on this show this morning. Sylvia in Hampshire says this: Sir Keir Starmer seems to have lost the plot and all insight into real life in this country today. We still have people living on the streets, endless housing waiting lists and homeless families sofa surfing. Yet the Prime Minister says there is plenty of spare housing for both asylum seekers and homeless Brits. This has to be the most absurd rubbish he has spouted since winning power. Nigel in Leicester said, so our Prime Minister reckons there is plenty of spare housing available, but he can't say where. Why then is our Housing Minister trying to build so many new homes, ruining the Greenbelt? Better not ask to flip-flop, as he won't know. I mean, does anybody actually out there think Keir Starmer is doing any sort of a job at all, never mind a good one? It's absolutely incredible how bad he is. I say it every day, but every day it gets worse. I didn't expect to have to come in today and explain to you how the Essex police have actually admitted to shipping in people from outside of the area in Epping to Epping so that they can have a punch-up with the people who are demonstrating quite legitimately and peacefully about a bunch of migrants who are staying in their hometown that they don't want. Unbelievable. Let's have a quick look at that bus crash in Manchester, because I haven't shown it to you yet, and it is quite an extraordinary clip. This is a guy who's driving a double-decker bus under a low bridge. And the thing that you might find extraordinary is that when he hits the bridge, he doesn't stop. Check it out. Here he comes. That's the bridge. Oh, he's still there. The whole roof is torn off the back of it. There were 20 people injured as a result of that. Absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, today, another bus has hit another bridge. I don't know what's going on in Manchester. Maybe they should be checking the drivers before they hire them, because they don't seem to be able to judge distance or height, which is a bit of a problem if you're driving a double-decker bus. It's 8:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Paul says this on Twitter. What the hell are the police thinking escorting pro-migrant protesters to the Bell Hotel? Total hypocrisy. Have they done this in the past during other protests, using taxpayers' money, and now they've moved the immigrants to Canary Wharf? This is not tackling immigration. And this from Graham in Birmingham. Your Birmingham caller is right. The biggest estate in Europe is Castle Vale. The migrants are given vouchers for free meals at a local pub. He didn't tell you that they're also given £70 vouchers to spend in the supermarkets. This should be used only for toiletries, food and essentials. They are seen buying alcohol, cigarettes and lottery tickets. The supermarkets turn a blind eye. This thoroughly depresses me. I'm not surprised. I mean, incredible. What is going on in this country? Extraordinary. Coming up, of course, as if you weren't disappointed enough with this week as it's going so far, on Friday, we've got yet another junior doctor's strike. Dr. Lawrence Buckman is here, former NHS GP and ex-chair of the BMA's GPs Committee. I don't know if you're still in the BMA, Lawrence. Like Lord Winston, you may have resigned it some time ago, but it seems to have turned into a bit of a radical lefty kind of exercise, isn't it?
I'm not a member of the BMA anymore. I resigned for other reasons.
Right.
I'm rather sad that the doctors are finding what they see as the only solution, which is to go on strike. I don't think that is the solution. They're going to have to talk eventually. Yeah. They might as well start talking now. And when talks break down, what you have to do is go back and think more laterally, be more inventive. And I'm not impressed that that's what they're doing.
No, and I don't think anybody else is either. I mean, even Wes Streeting, who was quite sympathetic to them last year and gave them 22% as soon as he got into power, hoping that would solve the problem, but it didn't. And so he's now calling it very reckless, what they're doing. The public are not supporting them, and I think they're destined to, as you say, have to return to the table with their tails between their legs, having really got nowhere.
Yes, well, a long time ago, I was advising them. This is a very long time ago.
Yeah.
The Department of Health are often quite grateful to find that there may be somebody who wants to work towards a solution, but this does not feel like that. There will be a solution. It's obvious that it's not just going to be money, but there again, the resident doctors.
I keep calling them juniors. I'm not having residents. They can call themselves juniors until they grow up. They can be called juniors.
Okay, them. I want them to think more inventively. Probably it's not going to be upfront cash, but there are all sorts of ways. Wes Streeting last week started talking about forgiving student debt. Now, that's a really complicated thing to do because every other student will want their debt forgiven. But there are ways of looking at what you end up with in your pocket at the end of the month that I think would be very constructive and would be ways out of the current impasse.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem for people who are watching this from afar and who know that their appointments and their procedures are going to be cancelled, 250,000, we think, at the last count, they don't have sympathy for them because they see doctors as pretty well-off people, whether rightly or wrongly, that's the case. They've had a reasonably good pay rise in the last the last year or so. I read a piece the other day that said in the last 8 years they've actually had effectively a 91% pay increase, and they're asking for reparations to be made back to 2008, when some of them, or quite maybe many of them, wouldn't even have been working as doctors then.
Yes, well, the bit of the NHS I work in hasn't had a pay rise. And I wouldn't mind one either, if anyone's listening.
Yeah, but you're not going on strike, though, are you?
No, I'm not. But that's because I don't really think doctors should be striking anyway.
Right.
I think the idea of striking against your customers and against patients, some of whom will have significant illnesses, I just find that just not what I went into business to do.
No, exactly.
I can certainly argue for looking after the resident doctors better. I think there is a case to be made for improving their terms and conditions. Indeed, I could argue that they deserve a small pay rise, but not what they're after, and not so quickly after entering into what appear to be very constructive talks with the Department of Health.
Yeah, but what would you say is so bad about their working conditions?
They're not treated very well by the management structures and by the way the health service operates. And that really means the amount of time they have at work and what they're asked to do at work. And this requires a whole system rethink of the way the health service, particularly in hospital, is made to work. Doctors don't enjoy being doctors anymore. There are a large number who would rather either do doctoring somewhere else, by which I mean Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or they actually don't want to be doctors anymore and they'd rather do something else. Now, that's not a good situation, and that isn't about money. If you're exhausted, you're just as exhausted if you double their pay.
Yeah.
So it's about the way they're made to work. And I think that is part of the marginal discussion that could take place, rather than money up front, is how do we make the way you work better, more efficient, and more in the interest of patients? And I don't see that as difficult. Obviously, it's impossible if you walk away from the table and insist on a strike.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, there may be no other way of doing it, but it indicates to me as well that the NHS, as a general rule, just isn't run very well. And this is just another part of that problem. Lawrence Buckman, thank you very much indeed. Got to run because we've got loads of people to talk to this morning. So many of you want to have your say. We want to give it to you as well. Miranda is calling in from Cumbria. Hi, Miranda.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm just out with the dog, walking the dog,
Okay.
and I've been listening to you intently. Now, I was just wondering about the Epping situation in regard to the police shooting the Antifa lot in, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder what legal advice that Chief Constable had been given to basically say that they could do that, and the fact that he denied it at first, and then he had to admit it. And I wonder how far up the chain of command it actually goes,
Yeah.
giving that legal advice them, whether it were, and I'm befuddled by it, basically.
Yes, no, I agree. Listen, Miranda, your line's not great because there's a lot of wind going around, but I think I got your gist. Your gist is, how did they get the legal advice? Did they get legal advice? Is a good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. We've got Jamie McIver coming up, councillor for Ongar over there in Essex. We know he's been close on this story, so we'll get from him maybe some idea as to what happened and how that happened and if they did get any advice. But here's from Stuart. He says the Essex police have given two fingers to the British public by putting their left-wing activist friends into the police buses to deliberately upset the people of Epping. And Earl says this: Mike, the footage of the lefty protesters getting into the police van, notice that they do not have their socialist worker signs when they're getting into the van, but they have them at the hotel. Where did the wooden stakes and the signs come from? Well, that's a very good question as well. Morning, Mike. Sarah in Birmingham says, I don't remember Lucy Connolly directly transporting anybody to migrant hotels. Just saying. And one from Steve, who says, surely the British people deserve better than this. Starmer's treacherous government, two-tier politicised senior police and judiciary, and incompetent immigration officers all need to be thrown out. What next? Government-funded taxis for pro-Palestine and Just Stop Oil protesters? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, do you remember those scenes when Just Stop Oil was sitting down in the road in Parliament Square and the police were going over to them, giving them water? When they glued themselves to it. I mean, just incredible. I don't know what's happened to the police in this country. I used to know coppers in my time when I was working in newspapers, and they weren't like this. It's 8:47.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
What are you looking for here?
An end. A real end.
Well, all of a sudden he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side.
I am very disappointed with President Putin. He'll talk so beautifully and then he'll bomb people at night.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8:51. I'm Mike Graham here with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. This one from Jay in Epping says, you're right, Mike. I'm hopping mad this morning. I live in Epping and just drove past the Bell. It's very empty looking right now. So perhaps the rumours were then true last night, because the suggestion was last night that the migrants were being moved out of the Bell Hotel by the Home Office and possibly brought to Canary Wharf to stay in the Britannia Hotel there, where a group of people were able to amass and wonder about whether that was happening. So the problem is with the government trying to move all these people around, you know, trying to make it into some kind of whack-a-mole game where you go, oh, the migrants have moved from this hotel, where are we going to put them? We'll put them in another hotel, don't tell anybody. We also saw there was advertising last night for coach drivers to actually drive refugees around, and the advert said the knowledge of London would be helpful. So extraordinary. We're going to talk to James Harvey in a moment, journalist at Vox Populi Media. Let's speak first, though, or get a voice note first from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Regarding the Essex Police, in addition to what they did, somebody must have organised this, and somebody must have paid these demonstrators to come, the Antifa-like mob. They must have paid them, somebody somewhere. We need to find out who was behind this. And also, some of those police officers should surely be charged, as you said, with inciting a riot. And if any police officers got injured in that riot, surely there's a claim.
Yeah.
And guess who's paying for the claim? That's right,
That's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely right. Darren, thanks for making that point. James Harvey's here with us, a journalist who was at Canary Wharf, I believe, last night. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Darren.
I'm Mike.
Good morning, Mike. Sorry.
That's okay.
Good morning, Mike.
It's easy to do that. I do it all the time. It seems as though there's a bit of confusion here. I've had a message from Epping to say that it looks as though the Bell Hotel is looking very quiet. Do you know whether or not that has in fact been emptied?
See, it's difficult because the Home Office is claiming that it hasn't happened.
Right.
But then there's security inside. The hotel is empty. People are having their bookings cancelled. And what is it? There was a councillor from, where was it? It was Tower Hamlets,
yeah,
who is claiming that he has seen the migrants go into the hotel in Canary Wharf.
Yes.
So it seems to be kind of conflicting opinions. But all of this wouldn't be happening. None of this would be happening. None of this, these protests happening on these streets, these flash demos, and this kind of curiosity as to where the migrants are going, if the government was just honest with us.
Right, no, quite. But I mean, what I'm interested in is if they've decided to move them out of the Bell Hotel in Epping, which it sounds like they have done, and then moved them to the Britannia in Canary Wharf. How did anyone find out that was going on then?
So allegedly what happened is they saw them all being packed up, put into buses, and then people in the area of Canary Wharf actually saw them being taken into the hotel.
Okay.
So that's the information that's come out.
Right. Because the problem for the government and for the Home Office and for the police is there's a lot of guys like yourself who are very good at actually tracking this stuff. You know, much better actually than some of the more traditional forms of media, because you're kind of talking to the people who are watching all this stuff all the time, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I'm not sure if you're aware what's going on in Beaufort at the moment at the Brook Hotel, but we were down there a couple of weeks ago, and we made our way over to the park, which is just opposite the hotel. A lot of young kids playing there, and as soon as we entered the park, a group of 15-year-old girls approached us, really scared and worried because they'd been sexually harassed and sexually assaulted by some of the migrants.
Yeah.
Even one of the young girls claims that her friend was 15 and was forced to give a hand job to one of the migrants in a stall at like a porta potty at a festival.
Right.
So it's so we're hearing this kind of information all the time, and we're doing exactly what the police should be doing, right? Yeah. We're doing the patrols now. We're going around the streets, finding out what's truly going on, and this is something that the police are meant to be doing, but they're not, and they are failing us. So it's unfortunately been left up to citizen media, independent journalists to find out the truth.
And are you passing that information on to the police as well?
Yes. The police. So we had it on video. The police were given that information by the young girls. There is still no arrest has been made.
Right.
None.
And what we know about the police situation in Epping is what they've told us, right? Which is that they've admitted bringing in, left-wing agitators to Epping to demonstrate against the local people who don't want the migrants there. It's an extraordinary story.
Yeah, so I mean, it's nothing new. They did the same in Southport as well. I don't know why it's a bit of Hegelian dialect, isn't it? Problem, reaction, solution. What they're trying to do is provoke a riot. And when they provoke a riot, they can come in heavy-handed and say, oh, yeah, we're only coming in heavy-handed because there's been a riot. Do you get what I mean? They can send in their snatch squads then as well. So that's why they're doing it. And you'll see there in the video, there's about, 50 lefties brought down there to provoke a reaction and, give us bad optics.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but that's what they do.
Yeah, sure. So you're going to be watching, presumably, what's going on at the Britannia Hotel today. How will you find out where else it's going to go on? Because obviously there's migrants everywhere, all over the country, in all kinds of different situations, in all kinds of different towns and cities. Are you just relying on sort of, word of mouth, people telling you stuff?
No, absolutely not. So there are quite high up people within taxi services who are fed up with what's going on.
Yeah.
And taxis, they know everything. They're the eyes and ears of the city, right?
Right.
So those taxi services are handing down information about where migrants are being placed, the HMOs they are being housed in, and the hotels they are going to as well, because they're aware of all that information.
Right.
So there are quite a lot of people who want to help. And yeah, we'll wherever these migrants go, we will find them.
Yeah. Well, you're doing great work, James. Thank you very much indeed. A journalist at Vox Populi Media. He was down there filming at Canary Wharf last night. It would seem as though certainly Tower Hamlets Council have actually admitted that there are migrants staying there. They say, we are aware of the government's decision to use the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf to provide temporary accommodation for asylum seekers. We also know from the stories that were coming into us last night that many people were not expecting that to be the case, because they were turning up in quite large numbers by the dozens looking for rooms that they had booked, only to be told, I'm sorry, we can't take your reservation at this time because the hotel is currently closed and or full because it's full of migrants. But here's what Tower Hamlets has also said. They say it's important the government ensures that there is a full package of support for those staying at the hotel. Well, what about a full package of support for the people who are affected by what's going on at the hotel? Absolutely incredible. David in Glasgow, on the subject of the Essex police, says, morning, Mike, will the police now bust the so-called far right to pro-Palestine rallies to counter protests? Surely it's only fair. Steve in Devon, listen to Starmer's words. He says he wants to stop migrants from coming on the boats. He's quite happy for them to come by legal routes from France, and he'll never put in deterrents to stop them coming. I saw a story yesterday about a smuggling gang that was actually smuggling people in reverse. What they were doing was they were picking people up who had flown here from Africa on visas, taking them illegally to France on lorries, so that they could then jump on dinghies and come back the other way and then claim asylum. Because you don't claim asylum if you come in on a visa. The whole thing is a complete and utter mess. Hev from Kent says this, Mike, good show. If the police can keep football fans apart to avoid conflict, why the hell are the cops allowing decent protesters who live in the area to be terrorised by those that live outside that area to come and deliberately disrupt and cause more tension? I know the police on the street follow orders, but who ordered this escort of the left aggravators? Have a good day. Well, I think that's the main question that we need to know the answer to. And here's another one from Gurdeep. It says, good morning. The issue of immigration, legal and illegal, and the successive governments, Conservative or Labour, were fully aware of the impact of this, but they ignored the warnings. Why? There must have been some reason. It appears that both parties have pursued policies that have undermined this once great nation's cohesion. The issue isn't a matter of inability to resolve the problem, it's a matter of not being willing to do so. They simply do not care. Many MPs and politicians across the political spectrum, whether from the Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, Labour, the Greens or Independents, seem indifferent to those who are trying to preserve Britain's national identity. And that really does seem to be the problem. Coming up in the next hour, Mark Littlewood joins us, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. Liam Halligan is here as well. He's got a really, really good explanation of just how bad and dire the economic situation is in this country. And it's getting worse because of Rachel Reeves. I'm Mike Graham. This is Morning Glory, back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say.
If you
you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you, of course, all the way through until 10. Alex Phillips in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. We've got lots and lots to talk about in this last hour. We've been talking an awful lot about what's been going on around the country, but specifically in Essex, where the Epping Hotel, the Bell Hotel, would appear now to have emptied itself of all of the migrants that were staying there, which caused quite a ruckus over the course of the last few days and the last week in particular, not least because it turns out that a lot of local residents were absolutely and utterly frustrated by the fact that somebody had been charged with an offence, a sexual offence against a teenage girl. They had been arrested. They have since appeared in court and denied the charge. However, what they've said, the people out there, is that the presence of the migrant hotel near a secondary school has been a cause of much alarm and distress to many of the young kids there, and also to many of the parents who said, protect our kids. Then it turns out that the Essex police have actually admitted this morning in the Daily Telegraph that they enabled a bunch of left-wing activist protesters to go out and demonstrate against the locals who were basically protesting against the migrants. So the whole story has become quite incredible. The fact that the British police have actually admitted to administering what could have turned out to be a riot and assisting what could have turned out to be a massive riot because they thought politically that was the right thing to do. The quote from the police in charge is quite remarkable. They basically say that they need to facilitate and protect people's rights. They say in terms of bringing people to the hotel, the police have a duty to facilitate free assembly, as if it's their job to actually bring people to the riot so that they can have a riot with people they disagree with. Seems incredible to me. We haven't heard anything from the police this morning as to whether somebody's going to get their notice handed to them or whether some resignations are going to be in order. Also, front page is full of tributes to Ozzy Osbourne, 1948 to 2025. The Sun's front page, the wonderful wizard of Ozzy. Rock legend Ozzy Osbourne died yesterday, aged 76, just 17 days after his last farewell concert with Black Sabbath. We've been paying tribute to him and listening to what you've got to say about him as well, and of course sending our condolences and love to his family, and particularly Sharon Osbourne, who worked here for such a long time at talkTV. We all got to know her rather well, and she was terrific, absolutely fantastic woman. Lots more to come. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're also going to be talking about the doctors' strike, which is going to kick off on Friday. Apparently Wes Streeting can't stop it from happening, despite the fact that he said he was going to fix the NHS by giving the doctors a pay pay rise last August, 22%. Now they've come back for another 29%. We'll be finding out what that's going to do to affect your appointments, to do your procedures. $250 million of them are going to be cancelled. It's going to cost 87 million quid. Esther McVeigh's here, Liam Halligan as well. He's going to tell us about the terrible state of the economy. And Mark Littlewood. It's all happening right here on Morning Glory. Stuart in Perthshire says, Mike, when we think of all those from Ozzy's era who didn't make it, from Hendrix to Keith Moon and Bon Scott, it is incredible that he actually saw 76 years. I wasn't a big fan of Black Sabbath. I was more AC/DC. That was more my thing. But there's no doubting his impact. And the thing about Ozzy Osbourne is not just that he was a fabulous sort of protagonist of heavy metal, one of the first bands, really, Black Sabbath, to play that sort of music. But he was a great British export. He lived for a long time in California and America, of course, as well. And here's a clip that we found from the MTV show The Osbournes. Here he is.
Look, I'm back, I'm home. Dog turd. My shoe.
No, but watch
oh, where?
It's all over the heel.
Oh, man. I'm sick and tired of everywhere I go, this it's driving me mental. I live in an $8 million turd. Now look at the lawn. With that big lawn. I might earn money and throw it in the fire. Look at the lawn, look at my radioactive. I'm going to buy a crocodile to eat all the animals.
I mean, it's just tremendous. It was the first proper reality show, really, as well. That was the thing. And he used to spend, as he said, he lived in an $8 million mansion. It's probably worth about $25 million now in California and Hollywood. And it was covered in dog mess. There was just dog mess everywhere you looked. It was a tiny little dog as well. I used to be sort of marvel at what came out of it. You should be going, it's only a little dog. How's it managed to create all that? Goodness me. Anyway, sorry, it's a bit early in the morning, isn't it, for that? 7 minutes past 9. Mark Littlewood's here, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. Mark, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Great to be with you.
Good to see you. I don't know if you were a Black Sabbath fan, but it's nice to celebrate. It's obviously a sad day today for the family, but it's nice to celebrate what used to be known as the Great British Eccentric, because I think Ozzy Osbourne definitely was one of those.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, talk about a life well lived, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was one of your viewers also saying, quite a miracle that he made it to 76, where, a real long life, really, for pop stars, certainly well lived.
Yes.
So, made quite an impression, not just through his music, but through his personality.
Yeah, absolutely. This from Sean in Bridlington. He says, I wasn't a fan of Ozzy's Black Sabbath, but his first 3 solo albums changed my life. His solo career saved his life and was at least as important as Black Sabbath. Blizzard of Oz was a work of genius. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Unfortunately, the other blizzard that we're going to talk about this morning is the state of our economy, because Liam Halligan's going to be up shortly after you, who's going to tell me that we are in dire situations here. Rachel Reeves yesterday appearing before the Lords Economic Affairs Committee, looking for all the world like she really didn't know what she was doing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's actually pretty simple, I think, Mike, to work out what the problem is, but our politicians and the Labour government are struggling to deduce from that what the solution is. The truth of the matter is the government is spending far too much money. I mean, that's been true for a long period of time. That the former Conservative government over 14 years, in my view, was similarly fiscally incontinent. But we are continuing to spend far too much money. And if that happens, 2 things catch up with you. Either your debt starts to become unsustainable, and we're seeing that now. We're now spending more just on servicing our debt, not paying it off, just paying the interest on it, than we're spending on our education budget. And you get huge pressure for tax rises to meet the ravenous demands of the public sector. The problem with that, of course, is that's very, very bad for economic growth. If you put up taxes in the private sector, you can expect growth to flatline. And we're probably taxing the economy pretty much to the max now. So if you dial up tax rates, you might hope that you get more money in, but you'll probably flatten business activity, and you may even get less money coming into the exchequer. So the only solution really is you need to find some pretty dramatic ways to get spending down. Unfortunately, Rachel Reeves put forward a rather modest package of measures, not a very well thought out package in my view, but nevertheless an attempt to reduce winter fuel allowance for some pensioners, ability to claim disability allowance and the rest of it, would have saved $5 billion, which is not a big amount of government expenditure, but they couldn't even get that through. So I think one of the reasons that she's looking so forlorn is it might be dawning on her somewhere in her subconsciousness about what needs to be done. We've got to get government spending down, but she knows she has not got a prayer of getting that, probably not even past her cabinet colleagues, let alone the Labour backbenchers. So talk about somebody caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, absolutely right. And let's have a look at her performance yesterday. This is her talking to the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee.
At the same time, we also have a challenging economic inheritance with high levels of tax as a share of GDP, historic high levels of government debt, and then also economic growth that really for the last 15 years has been very poor by historical standards because of the weak productivity growth that we've experienced in that period of time.
It just sounds like a kind of long apology, really, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And then again, just going back to my previous point, Mike, the bit that she didn't point out, which is just the truth of the situation, is that government spending is at an all-time high. Government spending just goes up and up inexorably. It's as if governments think that the way you make the books balance is, first of all, you give in to every demand in the public sector, and then you borrow or tax people to meet it. So she said economic growth is poor, that's true. Taxes are very high, that's true. Borrowing is very high, that's true. But all of that is basically a consequence of government spending being so enormously high. And its trajectory, if we don't correct this, is to go up and up and up and up and up, because we have an ageing population. That will mean more healthcare costs, more pension costs and the like. The government has not tucked money away to pay for our pensions. So all of that money needs to be found as we go along. So I think somewhere in the back of her mind, as I say, she knows that spending is the problem, but she didn't even enunciate that to a House of Lords Economic Committee, let alone take any serious actions on how we're going to get spending down. And frankly, politicians of all stripes have not been great about this. I'm trying to think of any political party who's put forward a plan to say, look, here's about 100 billion of savings that we think we could find, because it's probably something of that measure that we've got to find. And all of our politicians are ducking that big issue. So you get into that ghastly ratchet effect of tax rises, borrowing going up, and economic growth going down, or at least flatlining.
Right. And also, you know, the Times this morning with a story on the front page saying basically that Downing Street and the Prime Minister fear for a summer of riots because Britain is literally fraying at the edges. Downing Street officials have finally admitted, after listening to me probably for the best part of the last 6 or 7 months, they finally the penny has finally dropped. Angela Rayner saying that ministers need to acknowledge real concerns about rapid change, the migrant problem, which is not just a societal problem, which Nigel Farage has pointed out is really, really at the very heart of all of the problems of this country. It is a massive financial problem as well, because it's costing an absolute fortune. Billions and billions of pounds being spent, and people are getting to the point now where they're going to be, if they're told in you know, sort of the autumn of this year, I'm afraid we're going to have to come after you for some more taxes, I don't think they're going to be willing to pay them, because they see where the money's going and they don't want it to go there.
Yeah, it has to be right, doesn't it, Mike? I mean, by and large, I think the Brits are a pretty welcoming, forgiving, patient bunch of folk.
Yeah.
But where Angela Rayner has only got one small element of the story here is saying that we've got to acknowledge people's concerns. You've got to go a lot further than that. You've actually got to address people's concerns.
Yeah.
You can't just acknowledge that they're irritated. You've got to get to the root cause of it. And I think what's tested the patience of a lot of ordinary Brits up and down the land, who I say tend to be pretty fair-minded and patient people, is that it now is starting to see that those who come into the country, often illegally, are getting better treatment than those who have lived and worked here for many, many years. And that's just not fair. And when people start to think that the system isn't just fraying at the edges a bit, but there's a fundamental unfairness in the system, and they're being picked on in order to favour some other group who don't, on the face of it, don't obviously deserve preferment, that, I think, is when people get pretty sour. And you've been mentioning this issue in Essex, Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, if our social fabric is fraying at the edges, it would be good to have a police force that knew how to handle things properly rather than potentially exacerbating that even further. So I'm of the view, sadly, that the UK is a bit of a tinderbox at the moment.
Well, it really is. And I mean, this
to spark things off.
Yeah, and this story about the police, by the way, is going to have real resonance for the whole country. I mean, people are really angry about it this morning, more angry even than they were last week when we told them about the super injunction, which the last government took out to try and keep from the public that they were shipping in under cover of darkness, you know, thousands of thousands, tens of thousands of Afghan refugees. You know, because the fact that the police have now effectively admitted that they are now akin to left-wing activists puts them in a very bad position, because people will say, well, if you're now on one side rather than neutral, then you are not any longer the police as far as we're concerned. You're now a group of activists, and if it does kick off, we'll be taking you on.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, Mike? And I think you were reading out just a little earlier the statement from Essex Police that they sort of said something along the lines of, we have a duty to try and help free assembly and sort of get people to where they want to go.
First I've heard of it.
Can you imagine if they applied this to the policing of football matches?
Yeah.
But a whole cohort of away fans turn up. They say, right, well, where are the home fans? We want to go to that pub and cause a bit of a ruckus. And the police say, oh, well, let's escort you there then.
Right.
You'd have huge amounts of football violence. The police shouldn't be trying to destroy our freedoms, but they should be conscious of the limits of free assembly. They've got to keep the peace. That's their principal aim, not actually freedom of expression. That's more an aim for the courts. So I think they've got their duties and their responsibilities completely miswired.
Yeah.
Fortunately, nothing too bad has happened in Essex. But if that's the mindset of our police force up and down the country, then this tinderbox that I've been talking about is bound to spark off at some point, because they're making it worse, not better.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a shocking state of affairs. Very good to hear from you. Thanks very much indeed. And Mark Littlewood there, Director of Popular Conservatism UK. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Just enjoying your show whilst I'm out walking the dog. I am one of the couple of 300 people that attended the protest in Dis on Monday evening. And I think one of your listeners just questioned where all the placards and the signs came from. Well, they all left together at exactly 6 o'clock, which I thought was a little odd. So I decided to follow them, expecting them to go get a police bus, perhaps to the train station or something. And one woman gave me her sign, placard, refugees welcome or something. She said, do you want this? I said, yeah, where'd you get that from? And she said, it's from the organiser. So, oh, okay. And I said, oh, how are you getting home? She goes, I live in Holston, which is maybe 5 or 6 miles away from Dis. And another chap came from Hingham, which is, I don't know, best part of an hour away. So it does beg the question, are these people paid to come, maybe counter-protest for an hour? Just found it all very odd. They're certainly organised, no doubt about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that whenever you see some of the bigger demonstrations in London, they all carry socialist worker type placards, which have obviously been made in some central point and handed out to them. You know, nobody just makes the same socialist worker placard. You know, there's clearly some organisation going on here. But if it's being organised and assisted, shall we say, by the local police in either Dis and or Epping, we know it's happening in Epping. If it's happening in Dis as well, this is a massive, massive problem for the police, because they're creating their own ridiculous situation where they are likely to be under fire even more than they would be otherwise. You know, and if the Labour government and the Prime Minister is worried that there might be a summer of riots coming, does he even know what effect the police helping activists from the left will do? Has he even thought about that? Mike, now the police have fessed up to bussing lefties into Epping. Isn't that inciting violence? Asking for a friend, says Christina. Alison in Billericay in Essex says, morning, Mike. Not only did Essex police guide masked Antifas to the Bell Hotel, they lied about it and accused people of spreading misinformation on social media. They have now admitted the truth. Heads need to roll. Absolutely, Alison. I could not agree with you more. Where is Yvette Cooper, says Margaret in Birmingham. She needs to explain this police debacle. If there's a reshuffle, she needs to be top of the list. P.S. R.I.P. Ozzy Osbourne. Michelle from Rutland says, hi Mike, I can't get my head around the fact that the police are doing this. Surely they know that it's immoral, it's unethical, and it's just plain wrong. Surely the police were once normal people with normal values, so how come they've now become these awful, awful inciters of riots and violence? What has Labour promised them or given them or threatened them with for them to act in this way? It's a very, very important question. People are really angry about this. Coming up, we're going to talk to Liam Halligan to find out how bad the economy actually is. And I've got some bad news for you. It's really bad. He's written a big piece in the Telegraph about it this week and just letting us know precisely what could happen over the course of the summer. And Esther McVeigh is going to join us in the studio as well, former Tory Minister, of course, for Common Sense. She's been putting some good questions to the government this week as well. We'll get her view on this police debacle in Essex. Surely somebody needs to get the chop, don't they? 21 minutes past 9.
It's performative politics. They say what they think they need to say, which will become the electorate, and then do absolutely nothing because they feel they've discharged their obligations at that point. We have a government, we have parliamentarians who are nothing more than salesmen. They're not actually purveyors of plans and have the managerial execution capability to deliver those plans.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 24 minutes past 9. Mike, says Phil. Surely the police taking left-wing protesters to the Bell Hotel is inciting violence. What's going on? No wonder people are starting to take things into their own hands. And one from David who says, I'm sick and tired of the way this country is being run. The waste of our hard-earned taxes is criminal and I'm no longer willing to sponsor these idiots. I've decided to retire early so that I no longer contribute to their folly. I'm bloody angry about what is being done to our wonderful country. And one for Liam Halligan that we're just about to speak to. Rachel Thieves should have all the economic facts at her fingertips. She's the Chancellor rather than doing all this umming and ahhing. What a joke she is, says Brian in Liverpool. Yeah, I mean, her performance yesterday in front of the Lord's Economics Affairs Committee was woeful. Absolutely awful. Liam Hannigan's here, though, columnist at the Telegraph, a man that knows a thing or two about the economy, more than I think Rachel Reeves does, actually, because he wrote a great piece in the Telegraph this week telling us all how dreadful things are going to get over the summer. Liam, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Good to be with you.
Nice to see you. I see that I just retweeted, actually, just before I speak to you about Rachel Reeves, that you had something to say about Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath as well. You were obviously quite into it.
Indeed, I was never a massive metal fan in my youth. I was more into Hendrix, you know, posing with a bit of modern jazz, as you do.
Yeah.
But some, I mean, you know, Black Sabbath, 4 working class boys from Solihull, they basically invented a whole genre along with Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple in the mid to late 70s, before metal became a sort of parody of itself in the 80s with all the glam rock bands. You know, Paranoid, that's going to be played, you know, forever, and deservedly so. But the album that I really liked of Black Sabbath, without wishing to be sort of naturally contrarian, was Never Say Die. And most Sabbath fans really dissed that as an aberration of an album. But there was one track on that album called Hard Road that's a really beautiful song. It's really lyrical, fantastic words, really uplifting, brilliantly sung, a fantastic rocking guitar riff that sort of gets you off the sofa and makes you put one foot in front of the other when you're down. Try and drag yourself out of whatever hole you're in. It was important to me when I was a teenager, and in recent months I've had a pretty hard time, and it's become important to me again. So R.I.P. Ozzy Osbourne. You know, a man of excess, but a man of genuine talent and significance.
Yeah, totally. And it's always nice to get people like yourself's views on that, because people see you as a, you know, this very serious economist man, and you talk about the state of the economy. But
how can I be serious? How can I be serious behind me? I've got a squirrel on the frame of the picture behind me. I mean, how can I be serious?
Well, as long as you haven't bitten its head off, I think that'll be fine. But listen, I mean, I read your piece earlier with some alarm this week about how, you know, and I've been warning about this for a while. I don't have the qualifications you have, but I just see some terrible indicators and some terrible numbers coming out of this Chancellor of the Exchequer. She doesn't, one, know what she's doing, and she doesn't seem to have an answer to get us out of it.
But I think that's true. I don't want to become like the sort of sandwich board man of British public life, you know, the end is nigh. On the other hand, when the economy went down in 2008, Her Majesty the Queen rightly asked, famously, economists at the London School of Economics, one of my alma maters, you know, why did nobody see this coming? And the reality is people did see it coming, just no one listened to us. I wrote endless columns in the run-up to 2008 saying that there was a major problem, and that's why I'm not holding back now, because we do face a major fiscal crisis. We found, you know, we were just talking about the mid-70s there, weren't we, Mike, when we were young and sucked ice lollies and so on, but we are heading for a 1976 situation. I'm not talking about the long hot summer, I'm talking about when the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, had to bail out this country because this country was bankrupt. We had a Greek-style bailout, and that is where we are now heading. And I have to say, both from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey in their recent parliamentary appearances, with all due respect to them, they're out to lunch. They are showing no indication that they understand the significance of the situation. And, you know, the borrowing figures we had out yesterday, in the last month, in June, the UK government borrowed £21 billion roughly, way above expectations. But the clincher, Mike, is of that 21 billion, we borrowed 17 billion to pay interest on previous debt. That is a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
You know, that is not sustainable. Imagine if all the money you were borrowing in your business, 3/4 of the money you were borrowing in your business, wasn't to invest, wasn't to pay wages, wasn't to try and grow your business. It was actually to pay interest on your debts.
Well, it's kind of what people do in companies before the company goes under, isn't it? It's their last sort of ditch thing, and then suddenly it all goes horribly wrong.
No investor would invest in a company like that without taking over the whole company and sacking half the staff and totally restructuring the company.
Right.
It's really not a very good situation. And again, I don't want to talk down the economy. We have loads of tremendous entrepreneurs in this country. We have millions of people, tens of millions, who get up every morning and go to work and do a good job. But guess what? We've got far too many people who aren't working but are getting benefits regardless, even though they can work. Of course, we need to help people who genuinely need help. We've got far too many people working in the public sector, getting on for 1 in 4 of our workers now, many of whom are doing non-jobs.
Right.
Productivity in the public sector has fallen, and we can't afford to do this anymore. And Reeves and Bailey, both of them, have been trying to reassure us, looking down on us plebs, that it's all fine because these issues are happening in other countries. Yes, government borrowing costs have gone up in other countries. The debt interest bill on national debts has gone up in other countries. But the UK is an outlier now, Mike. It's an outlier because our government's borrowing costs are higher than all the other major economies in the world because investors are less willing to lend us money. Right. We look like less good a prospect for our credit. And most importantly, Mike, as I highlighted in many columns, but particularly last weekend in my Sunday Telegraph column, which you were kind enough to mention, we are an outlier because a very, very high share of the government debt that we have issued, the interest payments on those debts are linked to inflation. And as inflation goes up, our debt service bill goes up. That's exactly what we saw in these last numbers. £21 billion of borrowing, £17 billion on debt interest. And that means you get a ratchet because as inflation goes up, the more the government has to borrow to pay on debt service, and that then pushes inflation up more, and you get into an upward spiral of interest costs, an upward spiral of borrowing, and a downward spiral in terms of economic stability. That is what we now face. And a lot of people I know in financial markets, I'm one of the very, very, very few journalists in this country who actually has real contacts with major financial investors, because I used to be one. I used to work at a major asset management company. I talk to the guys who trade, and girls, mostly guys, who trade the bonds for these big insurance companies, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, who actually lend the British government serious money. They are not happy at all. And their fear, Mike, and it's a fear that's even being articulated now by the likes of the Office for Budget Responsibility, is that the only lever Reeves has got left to pull is ever higher tax rates. Right. But those tax rates won't lead to more revenue. They'll lead to less revenue because they'll just slow down the economy even more. And then the downward spiral will get...
Well, that's it, because every lever that she's pulled so far has had the complete opposite effect to the one that she wanted it to have. So is there a tipping point then? And if so, what is that tipping point? Well,
if I knew when the tipping point was and what it was going to be, I'd be a very wealthy man.
You'd be shorting it, right?
Yeah, but it's... in the 2008 crisis, the tipping point for that was something completely unrelated to the banks. A lot of the banks were rotten because they were basically lying to the public.
Right.
The investment banks, though far too few white-collar criminals were brought to book, as it were. But the tipping point in 2008 was because the oil price spiked. Yeah. And then suddenly investors thought, crikey, that's going to slow down the economy. That's going to expose just how weak a lot of these banks are. It could be something completely unrelated. But the reality is that financial markets are now looking really closely at the UK and wondering how we are going to get out of this crisis. And the politics makes it much worse because Labour tried to, I wouldn't say they didn't try to save £5 billion in welfare spending. They tried to slow down the increase in welfare spending by £5 billion. So welfare spending on health and invalidity benefit was going to go up from like 70 to 100 billion in the lifetime of this parliament, and Labour were trying to make that increase from 70 to 95 billion, right? Now it's going to be back. It's going to be 102 billion because their welfare reforms have actually led to, even more spending. Yeah. So because the Labour left goes so mental when the Labour government tries to do anything that's remotely financially responsible / realistic, markets are thinking, Starmer's got nowhere to go. Yeah. And, Rachel Reeves crying on the front bench because she's so frustrated by her own party's economic illiteracy. Government borrowing costs went up. They spiked up. Cost the British taxpayer, the best part of £2 billion, those tiers. Right. Imputed interest rate increases. And this is the problem we face. And it's not like the Bank of England can just set interest rates so the government pays a lower rate of interest. No, that's not how it works. The Bank of England sets policy rates, but what the rate that the government pays and the rate that really counts and ripples across the entire economy are the interest rates set in financial markets. The Bank of England just sets a benchmark, right? And financial markets are now completely ignoring that benchmark and going in the opposite direction. The Bank of England's lowered interest rates 4 times since last summer. Reeves endlessly goes on about, but she doesn't say that market interest rates have gone in the other direction, defying the Bank of England, and market interest rates, what the government pays to borrow, are now way higher than they were at the peak of the Liz Truss mini-budget crisis. And they have been way higher for the whole of this year. And yet no one in the broadcast media, or very few exceptions, Mike, certainly no one on the telly, wants to talk about that.
I know. It's extraordinary. But it's coming. It's coming. I just know it is. I have a feeling in my bones. And, you know, thank you for pointing it out. And we'll keep talking because the closer it gets, the more worried people should really be. Liam, thanks very much indeed. Liam Halligan, columnist at the Telegraph there, telling us just how bad things are economically. And Rachel Reeves literally hasn't got any answers. And as you just heard him say, Keir Starmer's got nowhere to go. Maybe you should call the Essex Police and they could take him somewhere. Let's get a voice note from Sharon.
Now, Mike, I'm just wondering, we've got the government that's against its own people. Now we've got proof that the police are working for the other side as well. Does that make us officially a corrupt country? That everybody that lives in this country now are going to have to fend for themselves because we've got no judiciary that's working for us, we've got no police working for us, and definitely no government working for us.
Yeah. I'm afraid, Sharon, I'd have to agree with you. Yeah, we've got nothing coming back from the government. We've got a judiciary that locks up the wrong people and lets the wrong people out. And we've got a police force now who don't actually bother trying to solve any crime. They're just there as a taxi service for left-wing activists. Brilliant. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:38. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way till 10 o'clock, of course. And we are then going to hand over to Alex Phillips, who's in for Julie Hartley-Brewer. I'm delighted to say we're now joined by Esther McVeigh. Very good morning to you, Esther.
Morning.
Former Minister, of course, for Common Sense in the Tory party. Now a really good sort of thorn in the side of Labour, which we'll get to in a minute. Let's get a quick voice note first from Dan, though, on busing protesters.
Morning, Mike. Dan here. The way this would be organised, if it's the same as 25 years ago when I was a student, is that the SWP would contact local groups that they have and say, ask your members, can anyone go to Epping to counter a far-right demonstration? That's how they would phrase it, obviously. And then certain people would come. The police would normally get wind of this. Right, they wouldn't organise it, but they get wind of it. And what they would do is normally hold the protesters together at Epping Station. And then they would escort them to the demonstration hot point, as it were, or basically to the hotel. The protesters know where the hotel is, so what the police are trying to do is just avoid random people turning up.
Well, that may well be, but nevertheless, it's not really the police's job to take them there. I can understand, like they do with football fans, walking them to the stadium, where they used to, when I was a kid, and we used to have to be kept separate. You know, if you were going to White Hart Lane, if you were a Man United fan, as I then was with my dad, we would go up one side of Seven Sisters Road, and the Spurs fans would be on the other side. But the police didn't actually put you in a van and drive you there, which is what they appear to have done in Epping, which is seemingly an incredible thing to do, isn't it? Have you ever heard of anything like this?
Absolutely extraordinary. If you knew an opposite group were coming, you saw them at the station, surely you'd say, go back home. You don't want confrontation. You don't say, let me lead you to where you're going. I mean, that chief constable has some serious questions to answer, and he should be gone if this is what
Well, particularly given what happened, because given that they not only took them there, but they then took them back again to the station, they then despite the fact that there was footage of it, denied that it had happened. And then finally, when they saw the footage, said, oh yeah, actually we did do that. So, you know, so first of all, they've lied about it. Then now they've admitted doing it. And the act of doing it itself should be a resigning matter.
So when you've denied it, you know it's wrong. So what were they doing? Was it a blame game? Were they trying to do diversionary tactics, i.e. they didn't have to do the policing, they were bringing another group in to do it? Whatever it is, whatever the explanation is, whatever the thought process were going through the chief constable's mind, they were wrong. And this is upsetting the public, because it wasn't some angry demonstration. It was people saying, why are illegal immigrants being treated better than our own population? And people knew there were issues bubbling, and the police should have been, if anything, absolutely squashing the upset, and those people need to be listened to.
You could argue that by doing what they did, they actually made the likelihood of violence even more likely.
Yeah, well, when you bring two opposing sides together, you are inflaming a situation, and that was wrong. Police aren't there to do that. So this, I think, is... I can only call it extraordinary, and that chief constable, in my mind, needs to go if he can't explain what went on.
But again, you know, no sign of Yvette Cooper anywhere. We haven't heard her making any kind of prognostication on this. And we spoke to a woman yesterday who's one of the mothers who was demonstrating down there, and she's very, very vocal about it, and she's been interviewed a couple of times by other outfits as well. And I said, what would your message be to Keir Starmer? She said, just tell him to come down here. You know, him and Yvette Cooper, tell them to come and talk to us and understand why we feel the way we feel, and understand why putting migrants in a hotel, all single men, next to a secondary school with teenage girls walking around is not a very good idea. You know, just come and talk to us. But of course, he doesn't have that common touch, does he?
Well, it's not only that. He doesn't want to believe that's what's going on. His idea of multiculturalism and diversity is our biggest strength, and everybody should come in. So he doesn't want to hear. He doesn't want to see. He's, if anything, in denial. And I did a piece about, over the summer recess, they're going to do Operation Save Starmer. And if you look what he's doing, it's like doubling down on his beliefs, which is going to gaslight the country further. So, you know, his first thing is setting up a department for 10 Downing Street. That's more advisors for him to back up and endorse what he's saying. And I always say Boris Johnson tried to do that before his ousting. It's not going to be a good thing. He's going to bring in another communications person, an old Blairite friend of Alistair Campbell, again, to do more public, a man called Tim Allen, you might know, who's actually going to do more of what he's saying. So we're going to hear more of that, and then a reshuffle.
Well, then, you know, if he does anything like he did this week at the front of the liaison committee, and he starts talking absolute balderdash and starts going, oh yeah, we've got loads of houses for people to go and stay in, and everyone's going, hang on a minute, you know, there's 1.3 million people on a waiting list. Well, you mean you've got loads of houses? He was terrible. I mean, he's even worse than Rachel Reeves was yesterday in front of the Lord's Economic Committee.
That's why he's not going to listen. That's what I'm saying. Really, the sooner he's gone, the better, because he can't listen. He's very robotic. He can't adapt to change. And he needs to say, gosh, everything's changed. It's worse than I thought. Actually, this is what we need to do. And that's the same with Rachel Reeves. She can't change what she's doing. Everybody said to her, taxing businesses is the worst thing you could do. Increasing employers' national insurance contribution, you're actually crushing intake, you're crushing growth, and she can't see it. Her thing, robot, is let's tax more. And she should have seen, she put capital gains tax up last year, and what's happened? The revenues from it have gone down.
Gone down, yeah, because people won't pay more tax. And certainly when they look around now, when they look now around what the money's going on, and the migrant issue now is reaching kind of boiling point, people aren't going to be willing to do it. They're just not going to do it. And the Times this morning has got it. The Prime Minister is now fearing that there's going to be a summer of riots. Well, no, whatever it is you say, Sherlock, because at the end of the day, you know, the country is kind of rising up against him because everywhere you look, you know, last night it was in Canary Wharf, everywhere you look, there's another hotel being commandeered, there's no sign of people not coming, people are going to continue to come for the rest of time, as far as we know.
Right, the best thing he could do over the summer recess is actually go to each of these places and understand what's going on, not sort of go back to Islington, not hang out with his mates from the bubble and his international lawyers and his
he's got another state visit coming up today. He's got Narendra Modi coming in. People are not going to be very happy about that either.
No, he does need to get out of his mindset, get away from people like Lord Hermer and speak to people and understand what's going on. I'm afraid he is deluded and so distant.
He's hopeless
from the public.
But he's not the only one. You know, you were questioning Bridget Phillipson this week on where the money is coming from or where the money's going. Let's have a look.
Mr. Speaker, this government is hampering schools from recruiting new teachers. First, they hiked up the cost through the increase in employers' national insurance contributions, and then the money promised to state schools from charging VAT on private fees was actually spent on housing instead. So, can the Secretary of State tell the House how much the increase in employers' national insurance contributions will cost schools in total over this Parliament?
Mr. Speaker, we are investing record sums in our state schools. The party opposite, however, want to take money out of our state schools to give tax breaks back to private schools. That tells you everything you need to know about their priorities.
They specialise in not answering the question, don't they?
Well, what I've pointed out, and it doesn't matter which Secretary of State I speak to, they don't know the cost. They don't know how much money is required by a school, the cost of it, and they certainly don't want to add in sort of the cost of the national insurance contribution to employers. They just haven't a clue. And it's not just Bridget Phillipson there who didn't know the answer. Very simple, hadn't a clue.
They're quite
what
rude
the answer
as well, aren't they? Though?
They are rude and they just talk at you, as I said. I asked Ed Miliband when he came in about net zero being wonderful. I said three simple questions. It was his statement. He came to the House telling us all how wonderful net zero was. I said, OK, can you tell us how much it will cost? Can you tell us who'll be paying it? And can you tell us if we get to net zero, what will the change be in global temperature? Couldn't answer those questions, and I would say that was the basics of what he was trying to push on us. None of them know simple economics. None of them know the cost, and that's why we're in the trouble we're in.
They must be terrified as well whenever they go into the House. But they are going to be asked questions by yourself or by Lee Anderson was asking Ed Miliband a similar question as well. And you know, everybody can see what they're doing. It's like, you know, I don't know who they think they're fooling. You know, they have been the worst performing government and I think the worst performing collection of ministers I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I think it's all ideology. It's all student politics, and they don't have that real world experience. They've got no practical experience, so what they say in an ideal world, etc., when they're with their friends at university might make sense, but when you move that to the real world, it doesn't, and their sums really don't add up at all. And when you saw Rachel Reeves in that committee yesterday, she was a broken woman.
She was.
She's out of her depths, and if there's one thing I think she does know, even though it's nothing about the economics, I think she now knows she doesn't know where to go and she's floundering. I thought it was cruel. I think she needs to be removed out of that department. We've seen her in tears. We saw her there not being able to answer. And I would equate it to like Biden.
Yeah.
At the end, we all knew it was cruel on Biden. He shouldn't be running America. She shouldn't be running the economy.
Somebody said to me yesterday that Keir Starmer's actually like our version of Biden, because he just doesn't make any sense. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He staggers from one thing to another. He says these things which aren't true. He asserts that they're doing something which they're not doing. You know, today, for example, is supposed to be the day they start, seizing the assets of these gang members. I haven't seen it happen yet. I don't think it's going to happen today. He says this is when we're beginning to do it. Well, it doesn't mean anything, you know. Let me ask you about your own party, because a bit of a reshuffle this week. James Cleverly back in.
Yes.
Is there going to be any more of that? What does it mean for Kemi Badenoch?
Well, I think Kemi wanted to bring more people in, which she has done there. I think it was started because Ed Arger wasn't well. And he said he needs to step down. So there was a little bit, a sort of a limited reshuffle there. I think it's great to have James Cleverly back. I think he's a good performer. He actually gets on with the backbenchers as well. So I think all of that's really important. New energy into the front bench there, because somebody had to move away. So I take it as a positive change, actually. I think that's good for her, and I think that's good for the front bench. Also, I think Neil O'Brien moving into doing policy, which I think he's great at. He's really good at sort of numbers, getting to the nitty-gritty of things. So I think that's a good move. And I think it shows that they're moving into, as I'd call it, the next gear, because I don't think they were expecting for Labour to collapse so quickly. No. I think they thought, oh, we can get everything in place gradually, you know, sort out CCHQ. But Labour's collapsed so quickly, they're moving to the next gear.
Exactly, and a lot of people are now believing what I said last sort of summer, that, you know, I'm not sure this government lasts, you know. I certainly don't think Starmer lasts, but they may not last as a government. Like listening to what Liam Halligan had to say, financially, they're in a terrible state.
Right, well, I've always said that. And actually, at home, between me and my husband, he goes, no, turkeys won't vote for Christmas. They're going to stay there for the full 5 years, because none of them, he says, because would be employed to do anything else. I said, Phil, it's not going to be like this. They're not going to make a logical decision. It's going to be an emotional decision. We've seen them all turning on Starmer. You saw 127 of his backbenchers rebelling over the welfare change. So it'll be a combination of a crumbling of his backbenchers. You've now seen a new party set up by Corbyn and Zara Sultana. So if they get that up and going, the collective, then people will move over to there. And I agree with Liam and your good self. It'll be a financial disaster that's going to happen, and it will be taken out of their hands, and that is how things will move on. Yeah,
extraordinary. Final word about Ozzy Osbourne. Front pages today, the wonderful Wizard of Ozzy. I mean, everybody's got a story of one kind or another, whether it's just that you listen to the music. Did you ever see him?
So as a teenager, I had his album Paranoid. I had his greatest hits. I have to say, with hair like mine, you could see why I would like backcombing it, putting all the makeup on, which I obviously still do.
Air guitar.
Exactly, to go to sort of the heavy metal gigs and bars in Liverpool. So I did go through my little phase of heavy rock, and you know, what a great performer. It was all theatre, wasn't it? It was all theatre, and so off his head some of the time. He did things I don't think he knew he was doing, which added to the performance.
Well, a lot of people have said that, you know, the fact that he made it to 76 is quite an achievement, really.
I think so. I think that's the wonders of modern medicine, is all I can say.
Well, I was making this joke earlier. One of my favourite quotes was that he said that he took so much acid one day, he went into a field and started talking to a horse, and when the horse told him to F off, he went home.
Well, you know, biting the bat and whatever else he was doing at the time, you know, lines of drugs, not knowing what he was taking. Unbelievable that he has lasted this long.
Exactly, and then, of course, the rebirth of the whole kind of the first proper reality TV show, which I remember watching the Osbournes on MTV, which was the beginning of a whole genre of television, which was hilarious. We were playing a clip from it earlier, chasing around after his dog. He was making a mess everywhere in his £8 million mansion, and he said, I live in an £8 million turd. That that was his quote.
But I think such a guess for us now, a great British eccentric, wasn't
definitely.
he? And I guess he didn't give a damn.
No.
So this is how he lived his life. And then there was huge honesty there. He'd made the mistakes, good, bad or indifferent. I guess he'd lived life to the extreme. And then he was coping with it as well. So I think all that, but obviously Sharon, his wife, I mean, God bless, she should get some sort of medal for having lived with him the full time.
She's quite a woman as well.
But now, I mean, they've spent their whole life together. Actually, I know my heart goes out to her and her family because I think they were like that, weren't they? They were absolutely soulmates.
Oh, totally, I mean, she was working here at Talk for a while and she ended up going back to look after him because he needed an operation. And I remember her telling us that, he was having to have this back operation. It was one of those that she didn't know if he would survive it. She was like, first, I have to be there because he might not make it through the end of the operation. So anyway, listen,
you can see that
an amazing woman. I've been told I've got to get out because it's getting late. Esther, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
We'll see you at the same time next week, probably. Coming up next, it's almost the end of the show, but we'll bring you a couple more tweets and maybe a call or two. This is Morning Glory.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's coming up to very nearly 10 o'clock. And we're going to finish with this one because we haven't mentioned Ukraine much, but Steve says this. We borrow money to then hand over the money in foreign aid to Ukraine. We then pay billions in interest on money we've never actually had the benefit of. It is absolute madness. Yeah, well, that's pretty much sums up where we are right now. Alex Phillips is here. Very good morning to you.
I just realised we match. Look at your tie and my dress.
Yes, very nice.
Oh, wow.
How
we look like we're going to some sort of events together.
How synergetic, you might say.
Mr. and Mrs. Common Sense.
Yeah. Imagine if we were married.
Wow. I mean,
the mind boggles. I remember you speechless.
I was imagining it then, and I was speechless, if I was honest.
I'm not actually
We'd
proposing.
eat well.
We would eat very well.
We'd eat very well and drink a lot.
We would.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not wake up very early in the morning, but anyway.
Yeah.
So, we've been talking a lot today about this business of the police bussing people in and out of demonstrations, which seems incredible.
The audacity of Essex Police to actually put out a statement over the weekend saying we categorically did not do this. And so because they put out a statement, like Peter Blexy had told me about it on Saturday, and I was like, that's terrible. And then I sort of casting aspersions about, and then they put out this statement, so I thought, OK, if they've categorically said in a press statement, we did not do this,